to 3 to 5 minutes to allow everyone the opportunity to be heard. I'd like to note that the entire written testimony that we receive will be a part of the record. So if you have not submitted it, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL@dccouncil.gov. Today, we will be getting a better understanding of what the agencies have accomplished over this past year and identify areas of success and areas of need for improvement. I look forward to working with and learning more from all of the agencies under the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor. I will now turn to any of my colleagues. None? Okay. I'm sure they'll join us later. But let me begin with a little review of the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. The board investigates alleged ethics law violations by district government employees and public officials. Bega also provides binding ethics advice and conducts mandatory training on the DC government's code of conduct. Bega is comprised of two distinct offices, the Office of Open Government and the Office of Government Ethics. The Office of Open Government ensures compliance with the District of Columbia Open Meetings Act, which requires that all public bodies gather to consider, conduct, or advise on public business, take all official actions during public meetings, and provide proper notice and detailed records of their meetings. The Office of Open Government also renders formal and informal advice to the public bodies seeking guidance on compliance with the provisions of the DC Open Meetings Act and conducts trainings and outreach on the procedural requirements of the Act. In addition to enforcing the Open Meetings Act, the entity advocates for fair and effective DC Freedom of Information Act, or the FOIA, processing. They issue advisory opinions on the FOIA issues in response to inquiries and assist members of the public in filing FOIA requests by providing training to ANCs twice a year and to DC government agencies and the public upon request. Bega also includes the Office of Government Ethics, which investigates allegations of ethical misconduct concerning district government employees and officials. The office has authority over the district government's workforce of approximately 34,000 employees, including ethics oversight of the mayor and the council. The office serves as the district's ethics prosecutor and is empowered to bring enforcement proceedings before the 5-member board of Ethics and Government Accountability, which in turn can levy civic penalties, including substantial monetary fines up to $5,000 per violation, or 3 times the amount of any unlawful gift or contribution. The Office of Government Ethics is responsible for providing binding ethics advice and training to district employees, oversight of lobbyist registration and activity, and compliance with financial disclosure statements that must be filed by high-level employees and elected officials. And so with that said, I'm going to call our first panel of public witnesses. And I believe we have 3. Yes. Ms. Dorothy Brazil, Executive Director of DC Watch, Ms. Tiffany Montgomery, public witness, and Mr. Fritz Mulhauser, representing the DC Open Government Coalition. And welcome, witnesses. Look forward to hearing from you. I believe Ms. Montgomery is on Zoom. Ms. Montgomery, we'll come to you. Let me get the public appearing witnesses first, and then we'll come to you. Ms. Brazil, you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Dorothy Brazil, and I'm the Executive Director of DC Watch. I had intended to have testimony today, but circumstances yesterday derailed my schedule. I would like to submit testimony before the record closes for this hearing, as well as to put some things on the record in time for the budget hearing on this agency. The bottom line is, I was there in the room when legislation was adopted, creating Bega and the Office of Open Government. I was there in the room when the Freedom of Information Act was passed and revised several times by this council. I am here today because I am sadly dismayed that the Bega IC and the Office of Open Government that exists is not living up to what it's supposed to be. Those failings need to be highlighted in order for them to change. This council needs to ask some hard questions and to hold them accountable. It is my hope that I will be able to submit testimony before the record closes. And in that testimony, I will detail a list of recurring problems that I have brought to the attention of Bega. I have brought to the attention of open government over the years, and nothing has been done. Or I get a pat on the head, oh, we'll look into it, and nothing happens. Again, I apologize for not being prepared today, but I would like to submit something for the record. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll look forward to getting your written record of concerns. Thank you, Ms. Brazil. Mr. Mulhauser, we'll take your testimony now.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm Fritz Mulhauser. I'm the co-chair of the legal committee of the board of directors of the DC Open Government Coalition. We too have been long involved in advocacy for an effective open government in the district. We're happy to tell you that the Office of Open Government is working hard, and we esteem all their efforts to train employees to know the law, to help the public understand their rights under records access and meetings access laws, to adjudicate complaints, advise people on individual cases, and come out to countless public events to spread the gospel of open government. Their best practices report, recently issued for 2023, is becoming an indispensable document. We commend it to staff and members. This year's version has analyses of issues, recommendations for improvement, and we think it's an important contribution to the discussion in the city. For example, on electronic records and digitizing the district's records system, open meetings enforcement, appeals of FOIA denials. These are all good topics, and they're addressed soundly in their reports. So we commend their work to you and their resource needs that they'll put in the budget. The difficulty that I want to talk about principally, however, is that despite the merit of a dozen or more recommendations in their report, even if they were all passed, the office couldn't effectively implement or oversee them. The new mandates would simply join a pile of existing rules and laws that they cannot effectively enforce. Look at the record. The Open Meetings Act, where their enforcement authority is clearest, perhaps, in the law, as you recounted in your opening brief, they're stretched thin. hundreds of education bodies alone, the local school advisory teams, the charter board community are under the law. Those hundreds of public bodies alone would take time of seasoned employees to advise, handle complaints and the like. ANCs are not under the office at all. And they're an endless source of problems of open meeting compliance under a different statute, not one the office enforces. And even when they do have jurisdiction, their enforcement tools are weak. They have slight fines imposable by a court after an arduous test of whether there's been a pattern or practice of improper closed meetings. In short, Open Meetings Act enforcement, it doesn't have the tools it needs. FOIA is in an even worse shape because they don't have jurisdiction to adjudicate complaints, improper processing procedures, or in any other respect, enforce the law. So we have unlawful redactions such as MPD, which has been told the police department to stop redacting officer faces and badges from released video from body cameras. The Court of Appeals told them, and the Office of Open Government in advisory opinions told them that's not the law, and they do it anyway. Agencies fail to publish as they should. The Office of Administrative Hearings has decades of unpublished opinions, and the Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel has years of unpublished FOIA appeal decisions. They've been told this is against the law, and they do it anyway. FOIA processing is a mess with lots of delay, lots of denials that are probably wrong, and there's nothing the office can do about it. So our point is that even existing law is not fully overseen, properly investigated when problems arise, or enforced. And ignorance is bliss. Nobody gathers data on the processing system, so we don't even know the shape of open meetings compliance, FOIA compliance, and the like. You know that you've asked the Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel for quarterly reports on FOIA appeals processing, and they just haven't done the job there. So we don't know what's going on in enforcement. The office lacks authority for enforcement in the fullest sense, and there's no focal point in the council because FOIA has no home base in any committee jurisdiction. We ask you to take a look at our idea for a commission that could look into this the way the Police Reform Commission did and put us on a new foundation, building a consensus for a robust open government legal system, resources for the technology that's needed. And then we can come to you in an oversight hearing and say, how are we doing to carry out a truly effective body of law through an effective Office of Open Government, which unfortunately we don't have today. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and we will be talking with the office about some of the comments that you made today. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We'll now hear from, yes, Ms. Tiffany Montgomery.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you kindly for the opportunity to testify. I'm testifying today in my capacity as a whistleblower who's assisting federal authorities. The U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and the chairman of the House of Oversight Committee are informed of the ongoing criminal investigation of the District of Columbia government by including but not limited to the FBI. And they are investigating DC Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, also known as Bega. I spoke to your general counsel, and she advised that she is not aware that one of the Bega board members is a convicted felon The convicted felon by the name of Darren Sobin was selected as the first director of government ethics at Bega, and he was repeatedly and illegally appointed to serve as a Bega board member by DC Council. And he continues to serve as a board member illegally as of today's date. I met with Chairman of House Oversight Committee's legal staff, Chairman James Comer's office, and they're aware that my former supervisor, Nicole Allen, Director of Office of Open Government, was referred for criminal investigation by 2 different DC government agencies, including the DC Department of Human Resources and the DC Metropolitan Police Department's Internal Affairs Bureau. Those documents were sent to your legal team and uploaded as part of this testimony. Unfortunately, DC Council failed to heed the recommendations of the DC Auditor Kathleen Patterson in 2019 in her report titled Bega Mishandled Whistleblower Complaint, where she recommended that convicted felon Darren Sobin and others at Bega testifying under oath to the DC Council based on the managerial dishonesty and the dysfunction of the agency. I filed a whistleblower lawsuit after I was terminated for reporting criminal activity, and unfortunately, the DC Attorney General's office was also involved in collusion and covering up the corruption at DC Bega. But don't take my word for it. Look back at the perjured testimony submitted by Director Allen and Ashley Cooks, as well as the former Director of Government Ethics, Rochelle Ford, in their denials that Bega was the subject of any sort of investigation or complaint. DC Bega was the subject of multiple complaints, including but not limited to not only the Inspector General's office, but the Office of Human Rights. And I also wanted to let the committee know that my former colleague, Mr. Johnny Barton, who served as the chief counsel, exploited Ms. Allen's habitual absenteeism from work and admitted to abusing his office. Basically, he used the government office as his private law firm, where he legally represented people, and he was unauthorized in doing so. Johnny Barton held multiple jobs, and he attended to personal errands, and he engaged in tasks for his external jobs. And I also submitted documentation regarding that. I'm simply very disappointed in how the DC Council has handled the investigation of Bega, or the lack of oversight concerning Bega. But I understand that Chairman Mendelson is aware that Mr. Sobin is a convicted felon. He's also aware that DC Bega was referred for criminal investigation by 2 separate DC government agencies, including DCHR and MPD Internal Affairs Bureau. And unfortunately, Mr. Mendelson also failed to act. But I am very grateful to GOP Chairman James Comer's office and his excellent legal staff, as well as the Office of the Honorable Byron Donald's office, who was also part of the GOP Oversight Committee. I do want to add that the convicted felon, Darren Sobin, misused his public office in order to collude with the Attorney General's office and another criminal suspect at Bega known as Rashi Raj, the general counsel, who was the general counsel for another DC government agency under criminal investigation, the DC Department of Forensic Sciences. They colluded to send a threatening communication to me, essentially threatening to sue me for exposing Darren Sobin's felony convictions, despite the fact that His felony convictions are not only accurate, but they are a part of the public record.
Miss
So
Montgomery,
just,
Miss Montgomery, I hate to ask, but are you telling us that all of this information you have submitted for the record? Do we have all
yes,
information for the record? Oh, all right. Okay. Just want to make sure I understand that. And
yes.
we cannot see you. Is that your intention?
No, I'm on the video and I actually did download the Zoom app. For some reason, it's not allowing me to start the video, but I am on video.
All righty. Okay. All right. And can you wrap up, give you another 30 seconds so you can wrap up you're now at 14 minutes. Oh,
Okay. Yes, I see. Okay.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. Hello. Yes. I'm just extremely grateful to the federal government, including but not limited to the FBI and Chairman James Comer's office, as well as everyone else at GOP oversight, as well as the Senate Committee on Homeland Security.
All
Thank you
right.
very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And we will start. Well, okay. I see Miss Brazil is, so Mr. Milhauser, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you see the Bega lacking the resources in order to enforce the good measures that they have put forth as it relates to FOIAs. And I just wondered if you could expound on that. Are you speaking of staff, or are we speaking of something else? You also mentioned a computer system, so just want to make sure we understand.
The fundamental shortcoming, I'm sure they would agree with, and it's in their own reporting as well. They lack the authority needed to do the job. They have new quarters, better suited to the work. Their staff is sizable now. And I don't know their technological capabilities, but the fundamental shortcoming is that they are not empowered to do anything regarding the entire FOIA system.
All right.
And with regard to Open Meetings Act, the sanctions or the power that they have to compel any agency to do better with open meetings is extremely limited. They feel frustrated by that and they address it in their reporting. And it would be great for you to explore that with them. But it's a fundamental structural problem that they are a weak agency facing a host of problems that no one else is paying attention to.
All right. I thank you very much for that. And we'll be sure to examine that a little further. Thank you very much for your testimony. And thanks to Ms. Brazil, I think we will expect to get her written testimony, and of course to Ms. Montgomery for your testimony. And that I must say concludes our public witnesses, and we will move right on to our government witnesses regarding the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. And as I indicated, they have a number of very critical responsibilities. And you've heard from Mr. Milhauser in particular about two major areas of concern. So we'll now hear from Ms. Ashley Cooks and Ms. Nicole Allen. If you'll come and take the witness stand, and of course, the chair of your board, Norma Richardson and Hutchison. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have the note before me. I'm trying to do a little memory here, but it's a pleasure to see you, all three of you. Thank you for joining us today. And of course, we'll ask you to raise your right hand so we can swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Barnes and members of the committee. I am Norma Hutchison, Chairperson of the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, also known as Bega or the Board, and I am pleased to be here to update the committee and the public on the status of Bega and its operations. With me today are Ashley Cooks, Director of the Office of Government Ethics, or OGE, and Nicole Allen, Director of the Office of Open Government, OOG, whose respective offices are overseen by the board. Both Director Cooks and Director Allen will provide testimony separately about their offices. I would also like to acknowledge my fellow board members, Charles Nottingham, Felice Smith, Darren Sobin, and Melissa Tucker. This has been another busy year for Bega as we continue to advance our mission as the district's ethics and open government authority, with the goal of fostering high ethical standards for district government employees and strengthening the public's confidence in an open and transparent district government. Bega moved into new offices at the end of 2023, and after more than a decade in operation, the entire agency is now working together from a single shared office. The new office allows Bega the room to accommodate our growing staff. Since the last performance oversight hearing, Bega has expanded the agency staff to better address the requests for guidance, trainings, and investigations undertaken by OGE and OOG. Our new office space has allowed Bega the room to move from virtual public meetings to hybrid meetings, and we held our first hybrid board meeting in January of 2024. Bega's board has continued to meet regularly, holding 12 monthly meetings in 2023. Bega has held one monthly meeting in 2024, with our second monthly meeting scheduled for later this week. The board also held one adversarial hearing earlier this year. On the enforcement front, the board approved 13 negotiated dispositions resolving violations of the Code of Conduct in FY 2023 and FY 24 to date, resulting in over $46,000 in civil penalties for board-approved agreements. OGE and OOG have been busy fulfilling their advice, education, and enforcement mandates. Both offices field hundreds of requests for guidance each year, conduct regular training sessions, and offer on-demand trainings for district government employees, agencies, and public bodies. To provide more detailed guidance on the application of the Code of Conduct, Open Meetings Act, or OMA, and the District Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, both OGE and OOG regularly issue advisory opinions to public officials and public bodies. Allegations of violations of the ethics and open government laws are addressed through a robust enforcement program. The work of both OGE and OOG informed the board's recommendations to the mayor and the council in Bega's annual best practices report, issued on December 21st, 2023. The report highlights the activities of OGE and OOG and provides recommendations for actions to further strengthen the district's public integrity and transparency laws. I would like to highlight a few key ethics and open government recommendations in the best practices report. As in prior years, Bega continues to recommend that the district adopt a comprehensive code of conduct, or CCC, that would consolidate government ethics laws in one place and standardize the practices of the legislative and executive branches, thereby strengthening the district's ethics framework. Along with changes to the district's code of conduct, Bega is also recommending revisions to the district's lobbying program administered by OGE. That would include increasing fines for lobbyists who fail to comply with the registration and reporting requirements, along with the addition of required training, which would promote increased transparency, and align the district's lobbying programs with the best practices in other jurisdictions. On the open government front, the best practices report also includes recommendations for changes to the OMA and the DC FOIA to make the operations of the district government more open and accessible to the public. In addition to recommendations to increase processing times for FOIA requests and appeals to align with timelines in neighboring jurisdictions, Bega also recommends providing OOG with additional tools to enforce violations of the OMA. A review of the monetary penalties for violations of state open meetings laws indicates that the district's maximum $250 civil penalty is on the lower side of civil penalties authorized in other jurisdictions for comparable violations. For the OMA enforcement provisions to work effectively, we recommend increasing the maximum fine to $1,000 per violation and permitting the court to award costs and fees of litigation. Bega also supports the recommendation from the DC Open Government Coalition to create an Information Technology and Transparency Commission to advise on updating the district's open government laws to address the way that the district conducts business and how information is collected, stored, and made available to the public. A commission would include representatives from the legislative and executive branches, along with outside experts, and would consider comments from the public. Under the continued leadership of both Director Cooks and Director Allen, Bega continues to focus on its mission of cultivating, promoting, and upholding the highest standards of ethics and transparency in the district government. The board will continue to support OGE and OOG as they implement new initiatives to strengthen the district's ethics and open government programs. Thank you, and I am pleased to answer any questions the committee may have as our Directors Cooks and Allen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I think we'll take the whole panel and then we'll come back and have our discussion if you don't mind. All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds and members of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor and staff. I am Nicole Allen, Director of Open Government, and it is a pleasure to come before you today to discuss the Office of Open Government, also referred as OOG's performance in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 24 to date. OOG is an office within the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability with a statutory charge to ensure agency and public body compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Meetings Act. Public records and government meetings provide valuable insights into how District of Columbia government officials make decisions and spend taxpayer dollars. The Open Meetings Act, known as OMA, or Freedom of Information Act, known as FOIA, contribute to an effective and accountable district government by discouraging corruption and by putting government operations out in open view. To that end, OOG's mission is to ensure that government operations at every level are open and accessible to the public. OOG enforces the OMA and provides advice on the district's implementation of FOIA. As Director of Open Government, Bega's enabling legislation requires that I issue advisory opinions regarding compliance with the Open Meetings Act, provide training for members of public bodies and their staff on the Open Meetings Act, and issue rules to implement the Open Meetings Act. I may also bring a lawsuit in DC Superior Court to enforce the OMA if necessary. Our enabling legislation also permits OOG to issue advisory opinions and to render advice on the implementation of FOIA. OOG is also responsible for training the district's FOIA officers on DC FOIA law and regulations in coordination with the Executive Office of the Mayor. We also train Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners, or ANCs, on FOIA twice a year with the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. OOG assists the public with the submissions of FOIA requests to ensure the FOIA process remains fair and available to all persons. In short, OOG advances government transparency by providing fair, objective, and clear guidance and training on the application of the OMA and FOIA laws and regulations. I will now detail the Office of Open Government's FY23 and FY24 performance to date. OOG oversees OMA compliance of more than 250 boards, commissions, and public bodies, and advises 90 independent and mayoral agencies, the Executive Office of Mayor, the Council of the District of Columbia, regarding compliance with FOIA. Our overall goal in each fiscal year is to ensure that OOG provides fair and objective advice, and that the information we provide is accurate and current. OOG's performance in FY23 provided a vehicle for greater understanding of the application of the OMA and FOIA laws and regulations. A summary of OOG's activities and programs to highlight our operations in FY23 to date is as follows. With respect to advisory and compliance activity, the Office of Open Government provides informal advice to public bodies and members of the public regarding the OMA and FOIA. Our tracking and reporting cycles for this activity corresponds with our monthly report to Bega's board. From FY23 to date, OOG responded to 124 requests for OMA advice, 2 requests for general parliamentary law advice, which is related to the OMA regulations, and 115 requests for FOIA advice. OOG also maintains the District of Columbia's central meeting calendar. Every public body may use this calendar to provide information to the public with notice of their meetings and other pertinent information. OOG responded to 223 requests for technical assistance with open-dc.gov from FY23 to date. OOG also responds to formal complaints about public bodies' compliance with the OMA. In FY23 to date, OOG received 6 OMA complaints against public bodies, dismissing 3 complaints that were outside the scope of the OMA and resolving 1 complaint through an advisory opinion from myself. The resolution of the 2 remaining OMA complaints are currently pending. OOG also advises district agencies on the application of DC FOIA by issuing advisory opinions. We issued 4 advisory opinions regarding DC FOIA in FY23 to date. OOG's legal staff also attends remote public meetings on a weekly basis to ensure compliance with the OMA. During their weekly monitoring, they inspect public body websites and OOG's central meeting calendar for public meeting notices and records. OOG's attorneys provide legal advice on OMA compliance and take corrective action if necessary as a result of this monitoring. In FY23, OOG's legal staff monitored 262 public body meetings, which resulted in 63 corrective action measures taken by OOG's attorneys. In FY24 to date, OOG staff monitored 44 public body meetings, which resulted in 6 total corrective action measures taken by OOG's attorneys. In FY23, the most frequent OMA violations were failure to post a meeting agenda, failure to include the OMA regulatory statement, and incomplete meeting notice. In FY24 to date, the most frequent OMA violation has been failing to post the meeting agenda. I will detail the Office of Open Government's training and outreach activity now. OOG is ensuring government transparency by conducting training sessions on the OMA and FOIA. In FY23, we conducted 22 FOIA trainings, 13 OMA trainings, and 1 dual FOIA OMA training. In FY24 to date, OOG conducted 1 FOIA training, 4 OMA trainings, and 2 dual FOIA and OMA trainings. OOG offered its annual FOIA Officers Training Series in FY23, which included a series of 5 training courses tailored for new and seasoned FOIA officers. OOG also participated as featured speakers in the DC Open Government Coalition's series of community conversations called Digging into DC, offered at DC public libraries. OOG provided in-person training to members of the public on DC FOIA. OOG also continued to publish its newsletter, The Open Govist. We released 4 issues in FY23, which provided updates on the activities of OOG, including the advisory opinions issued and other open government topics of interest. As director, I continue to make significant outreach efforts to further the cause of government transparency. In FY '24, I provided written comments on the Addressing Crime Trends Act, now Amendment Act of 2023, where I stressed that DC police officers' faces, badge numbers should not be redacted under the DC FOIA privacy exemption. I also stressed that the Judiciary Committee should reject the categorical exclusion for police disciplinary records, and that body-worn camera footage should not be used to draft police reports, but where it is used, the police officer should note it on the report. I will now briefly detail the Office of Open Government's fiscal year 2024 priorities. In FY '24, OOG will continue its outreach efforts to the government and to the public to further the goals of openness and transparency. To advance OOG's mission, the office is focusing on 3 primary initiatives. First is the completion of a comprehensive training manual on the Open Meetings Act. We will continue public body monitoring compliance with OMA and FOIA by continuing to attend meetings and audit websites for required information. And our third initiative is to increase public outreach through OOG's provision of increased in-person and virtual training opportunities. I would now like to offer recommendations for changes to the OMA and FOIA to make the district's operations more transparent, accessible, and open to the public. The first recommendation concerns public bodies and remote access to public meetings. The council should permanently adopt pandemic-era changes to the OMA that allow public bodies to permit the public to attend open meetings via streaming and or teleconference. The committee should consider the permanent enactment of DC Official Code Section 2-575A4 and 2-577A1, which are currently temporary and set to expire on April 28th, 2024. The second recommendation is the formation of an Information Technology and Transparency Commission. The DC Open Government Coalition provided a recommendation during Bega's FY '23 performance hearing to create an Information Technology and Transparency Commission, which we encourage the committee to adopt. Excuse me. DC FOIA was enacted in 1976 and is inadequate to regulate the volume and scope of requests that district agencies and offices now receive, which is 11,522 in FY '22 compared to 6,008 in FY '12. While the council has passed amendments, including the Freedom of Information Act Amendment of 2000, the law needs to be further modernized and improved drafting. Similarly, the OMA currently includes several policy gaps and ambiguities and still needs experienced hands to revise it. So to advise on reviewing, redrafting, and updating the district's open government laws in a meaningful expert way, the committee should create and fund a commission to assemble parties such as OOG, the Office of the Secretary, the Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel, the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Open Government Advisory Group, journalists, and the DC Open Government Coalition. The third recommendation concerns advisory neighborhood commissioners' meetings. The committee should also revise the OMA to bring ANCs under the scope of the OMA. OOG receives requests from individual ANCs for OMA and parliamentary procedure training. We also receive complaints from members of the public regarding ANC meeting compliance with the OMA. There seems to be a general thought in the district that ANCs are subject to the OMA. I believe that more people have been attending DC government meetings in general since they become available online. So there's a general assumption that these meetings are subject to the OMA like other government meetings. The ANC meetings should be subject to the OMA, and the OOG should have the authority to regulate these meetings. With advances in technology, we have learned to record meetings and hold virtual meetings using a telephone or other handheld devices. What may have once been difficult for an ANC is something we do now every day, virtual meetings. Bringing them under OOG's regulatory authority over meetings would allow OOG to provide ANCs with training, with support, and with other resources they need to be more effective leaders and to hold more open and transparent meetings. The last recommendation concerns enforcement by OOG. While litigation remains our last resort for use in cases where the public bodies resist conciliation and other communicative remedies, OOG recommends legislation to accomplish the following: an increase in the maximum civil fine for an OMA violation, the recovery of fines for any category of OMA violation, not just improper closure, and the recovery of costs and fees of litigation. Under the existing law, the monetary penalty for an OMA violation is limited in three critical ways. First, it is limited to a civil fine of not more than $250, which has not been updated since then Councilmember Che proposed it in 2010. Second, the fine only applies to improper closure, not advance notice or record-keeping violations. Third, the court must find a pattern or practice of willfully participating in one or more improper closed meetings, implying that OOG cannot seek a fine unless it has waited and observed multiple, if not several, violations taking place in order to establish evidence of the pattern or practice. For the OMA's enforcement provisions to work early, effectively, and comprehensively, OOG recommends increasing the maximum fine to $1,000 per violation and extending it to cover any violation of the OMA, assuming, of course, it is serious and deliberate enough to warrant a fine. Similarly, OOG recommends amending the enforcement section of the OMA to permit the court to award the cost of fees of litigation. I will conclude my testimony now with a review of the office's growth and development. I assumed the role of Director of Open Government in July 2018, and I was reappointed in July 2023. In my 6 years as Director, I have facilitated the office's growth from a legal staff of 1 to a full legal staff with a chief counsel, 3 attorneys, and a paralegal. I have established our office as a reliable resource for expert information and assistance, and I have worked with the Executive Office of the Mayor and the Council to successfully relocate the agency to a new facility along with my Bega colleagues. While OOG has made great strides during my tenure as Director from an organizational standpoint, I believe there is much work for us to do in order to maintain the public's confidence in government by assuring it is operating in a manner that is transparent. In FY23, there was an even greater need for education and training regarding the OMA and FOIA regulations than when I first joined Bega in 2018. Meeting this need has always been OOG's focus. However, a shift toward compliance may become necessary in the future if the government fails to respect its obligation to maintain the public's trust. Through our public body monitoring and education activities, OOG aims to ensure public bodies and government agencies are well-positioned and equipped to comply with the law. Thank you, Chairperson Bonds and members of the committee for this opportunity to highlight the Office of Open Government's operations and vision for the future. I am pleased to answer any questions that you or the members of the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And now we'll hear from Ms. Cooks.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, members of the committee, and council staff. I'm Ashley Cooks, Director of Government Ethics, and I'm pleased to update the committee and the public on the performance and operations of the Office of Government Ethics, also known as OGE. OGE's mission is to promote public trust and safeguard the district government's integrity by ensuring that employees and public officials abide by the government's ethics standards. OGE administers and enforces the District of Columbia's Code of Conduct. OGE's primary responsibilities include providing ethics advice and training to district government employees and public officials, producing ethics training materials, issuing rules and regulations governing the ethical conduct of employees and public officials, receiving, investigating, and prosecuting alleged violations of the Code of Conduct, and administering the district's lobbying and financial disclosure programs. OGE's legal staff includes a general counsel, senior attorney, supervisory attorney, and 3 attorney advisors. The investigative team is comprised of a supervisory investigator and 3 investigators. The administrative team, which is shared with the Office of Open Government, consists of a chief of staff, administrative officer, human resources specialist, program coordinator, IT specialist, auditor, and a program support assistant. I'm proud to say that OGE has continued to fulfill its mission throughout fiscal years 2023 and 2024, FY23 and FY24. In my testimony, I will begin with an update on OGE's performance within its respective programs, Then an update on the status of initiatives that were discussed at the last performance oversight hearing. And lastly, I will discuss OGE's initiatives for the remainder of this fiscal year. With respect to education and training, OGE has continued to provide ethics training for the 37,000 district government employees and public officials, including training new employees, board and commission members, and advisory neighborhood commissioners. We have utilized virtual platforms such as Microsoft Teams, WebEx, and Zoom to conduct trainings on various ethics topics on a monthly and quarterly basis, as well as upon request. OGE conducted a total of 91 training courses in FY '23 and FY '24. We continue to provide training through the Department of Human Resources PeopleSoft database. OGE has continued to provide on-demand training through its online learning management system, and nearly 6,000 employees have registered for the system. Our learning management system was recently featured as a #1 training upgrade in the Campaign Legal Center's annual Top 10 Ethics Report. And according to OGE's FY '23 key performance indicators, 95% of training evaluations completed by attendees resulted in an overall positive rating on the evaluation form. In FY '23, during the week of October 11th through the 14th, 2022, Bega held its annual Ethics Week program entitled Ethics in Practice. Attendees had the opportunity to attend 13 courses and panel discussions that provided information on the importance of implementing ethics in daily operations of the government. Both OGE and the Office of Open Government, OOG, presented programs on the operations of the respective offices and conducted courses designed to educate employees on ethics rules, including real-life ethics scenarios and open government issues that they need to be aware of in their day-to-day work for the district. In FY '24, during the week of October 23rd through the 27th, Bega held Ethics Week 2023, Everyday Ethics, #can't go a day without it. The 2023 program consisted of 20 training courses presented by OGE and OOG that were again geared toward encouraging employees to make ethics and open government transparency a part of their daily activities. Each annual program was well received and well attended. Recordings of the presentations are available on our website. With respect to ethics advice and guidance, in FY '23, OGE issued 4 formal advisory opinions. On April 5th, 2023, OGE issued guidance on the financial disclosure filing process, which provides guidance on the financial reporting system for district government employees and public officials. This advisory opinion explains the purpose of the financial disclosure and provides an overview of how to file a financial disclosure statement. On May 3rd, 2023, OGE issued guidance on recusal, which provides guidance on when a recusal is warranted and how employees should recuse themselves to avoid violating the ethics rules. On June 22nd, 2023, OGE issued guidance on the Local Hatch Act and the use of campaign slogans, which clarifies the permissible and prohibited uses of campaign slogans by district employees in their official capacity under the Local Hatch Act. It provides guidance on slogans such as Build Back Better, Finish the Job, Make America Great Again, or MAGA. On August 28, 2023, OGE issued guidance on outside activity and teaching as an adjunct professor in response to a request from a district government employee for advice regarding whether he could engage in outside employment without violating the district's outside employment restrictions. All OGE's formal advisory opinions are posted on the Bega website and are published in the DC Register. In addition to formal advisory opinions, OGE responded to 449 ethics inquiries in FY '23 and FY '24 to date. At this time, advice requests can be made via telephone, email, or in person within the Bega office. Although OGE's attorneys are required to respond to requests for advice within 48 hours, most of the advice is provided on the same day. Our ethics advice is stored internally to ensure consistency of informal advice-giving functions. In FY '23 and '24, Bega published its annual best practice report, which highlights the functional achievements of both OOG and OGE and sets forth recommendations for improving the district government's ethics and open government laws. Specific to ethics, OGE continues to recommend that the district adopt a comprehensive code of conduct, CCC. Adopting the code of conduct would consolidate the government ethics laws and standardize practices between the executive and legislative branches, and would apply the ethics rules to all employees who perform services for the district, including contractors. The legislation would also streamline the financial reporting process by using a bright line salary threshold for designating filers. 2, set the same monetary limits for gifts between all branches of the government. 3, implement restrictions on providing professional services for compensation. 4, add an outside employment notification requirement for all financial disclosure filers. 5, require annual ethics training for all covered employees. And 6, include language to clarify the provisions of the nepotism statute. In addition to ethics advice and guidance, OGE has continued to engage in outreach by publishing its bi-monthly newsletter, Ethically Speaking. The newsletter provides guidance regarding compliance with the ethics rules, offers ideas to build internal thoughts, and gives notification of ethics in the news, enforcement updates, and upcoming events. Regarding investigations and enforcement, OGE received 246 complaints and initiated 140 investigations based on those complaints. OGE closed 117 complaints and 116 investigations in FY 23 and 24 to date. 7 of those 160 investigations are closed but are still pending collection. The number of investigation closures is higher than those open because some of the cases predated FY 23 and 24. Of the closed investigations, 13 resulted in negotiated dispositions with fines ranging from $500 to $15,000 and restitution of $64,000, totaling $111,513. 5 of those investigations resulted in a show cause hearing in which I ordered $15,500 in ministerial fines respectively. These enforcement actions resulted from an array of ethics violations, including misuse of government time and resources, engaging in outside activity that conflicts with official government duties, financial conflicts of interest, and nepotism. As required by the Ethics Act, OGE publishes quarterly reports that list our investigations, including the case status, description of the allegations, and any resulting dispositions. All final orders as well as negotiated dispositions are posted on the Bega website. OGE prosecuted 1 enforcement matter before the Bega board in a public hearing. In the matter of case number 23-0006F, Henry David DeBoer, OGE presented evidence that Mr. DeBoer, number 1, violated the outside employment restrictions by working for a private entity during his tour of duty. 2, misused government resources to perform his outside employment. 3, represented an entity before the government. And 4, violated the financial disclosure statement laws by failing to report his outside employer on his 2023 statement and failing to file on his 2022 statement and failing to file a 2023 statement. A record of the hearing will be made public on our website. Regarding the administration of the district's lobbying registration and reporting program, pursuant to DC Official Code Section 1-1162.27A, a person shall register with the Director of Government Ethics and pay the required registration fee if the person receives compensation or expends funds in an amount of $250 or more in any 3 consecutive calendar month period for lobbying. According to Section 1-1162.30A, each registrant shall file quarterly reports concerning their lobbying activity. OGE maintains an electronic filing system that lobbyists use to meet their filing requirements, which is accessible to the public through the Bega website. As a compliance agency, Bega measures success in achieving compliance through the accurate and timely reporting of lobbyist registration and activity reports. The lobbying registration and reporting e-filing system tracks the total number of registered lobbyists filing dates, and penalties, while OGE staff monitors the system for late filing penalties and fine payments. In calendar year 2023, OGE received 397 lobbyist registrations, which resulted in $151,000 in registration fees, and received 1,646 activity reports. In 2023, OGE assessed $5,960 in fines and late fees and collected all but $600 of that amount. The last performance update concerns OGE's administration of the government's financial disclosure program. Bega is responsible for ensuring that employees and public officials who meet the statutory requirements file annual financial disclosure statements, FDS. The FDS e-filing system is the central source for all public financial disclosure filings. The purpose of the program is to ensure transparency of employees' financial interests and to prevent employees from engaging in financial conflicts of interest. Interested persons can access this system on our website. OGE ensures compliance with public and confidential filing requirements. The 2023 FDS filing season was successfully completed in June 2023 with 4,226 public filers and 3,439 confidential filers submitting their financial disclosure statements using the e-filing system. In addition, all council members filed their biannual financial disclosure statements using the e-filing system. On the personnel front, OGE staff has diligently focused on fulfilling Bega's mission, and I would like to take this time to acknowledge and thank them publicly for their professionalism, dedication, hard work, and commitment to the agency's mission. Next, I'll discuss the status of OGE's FY23 initiatives and priorities, which were addressed at the last performance oversight hearing. First, Bega prioritized securing new office space that met the agency's needs. In FY22, Bega received funding to move the agency to a new office. With the assistance of the Department of General Services, the agency has moved to a new office located at 1030 15th Street Northwest. The new space allows both OGE and OOG to coexist in the same space and provide suitable rooms to conduct trainings and public meetings. Second, OGE prioritized the passage of the Comprehensive Code of Conduct, CCC. The legislation was introduced on 3 prior occasions, but failed to be enacted each time. OGE has recently updated the legislation and will put forth efforts to ensure that the legislation is passed this fiscal year. Third, OGE began an initiative to collect delinquent debt that was owed to the agency because of the imposition of fines from ethics violations. Pursuant to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Delinquent Debt Recovery Amendment Act of 2022, OGE entered into a memorandum of agreement for debt collection services with the District's Central Collection Unit in October 2023. Since that time, approximately 76% of OGE's closed pending collection cases were referred for collections. We will continue sending cases that are delinquent to the CCU on a rolling basis. Fourth, OGE set out to make the financial disclosure e-filing system accessible to all filers. During the 2023 filing season, both public and confidential filers submitted their statements using the e-filing system. Fifth, OGE completed upgrades to the lobbyist registration and reporting e-filing system. With the assistance of the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, OGE deployed upgrades which make the system user-friendly for lobbyists, increases the administrative controls for OGE staff, and ensures that information is available to the public. Specifically, the upgrades include converting a terminated entity from active to inactive, prohibiting a lobbyist from filing an activity report if there is no active registration, prohibiting the filing of reports if there are outstanding fees or fines, allowing staff to add the names of officials to reports, and increase search capabilities for contributions and gifts. Lastly, I'll provide testimony on OGE's current priorities for FY24. First is the financial disclosure rulemaking. OGE is in the process of identifying boards and commissions that are not listed as public officials in DC Official Code Section 1-1161.0147 for purposes of financial disclosure, but that engage in duties that create or appear to create a conflict of interest. Pursuant to Section 1-1162.24A, the Ethics Act, public officials except advisory neighborhood commissioners and candidates for election to public office who are not otherwise required to file shall file with the Board a public financial disclosure report. The Ethics Act defines public official to include any additional employees designated by the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability who make decisions or participate substantially in areas of contracting, procurement, administration of grants or subsidies, developing policies, land use planning, inspecting, licensing, regulating, or auditing, or act in areas of responsibilities that may create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. OGE has determined that these board and commission members meet the definition of public official. OGE is in the process of drafting a rulemaking that would designate those board and commission members as public financial disclosure statement filers because their duties create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. The rulemaking will also make it mandatory that confidential filers use the e-filing system to submit their statements. The next priority is amending the lobbyist registration fees and fines. As part of the FY 2025 Budget Support Act, Bega has recommended an amendment to the Ethics Act that would increase the lobbying registration fees and fines. Bega's fees and late filing penalties for lobbyists are on the lower end of the spectrum compared to other jurisdictions. In Chicago, Illinois, the registration fee is $350 and $75 per client. And the fine for filing a late activity or registration report is $1,000 per day and suspension of the lobbyist registration. In addition, Chicago's law provides that a person who employs a lobbyist but who fails to register may be subject to a fine of up to $20,000. The Maryland State Ethics Commission has the authority to impose a fine of up to $5,000 for late registration and reporting. The Kentucky Ethics Commission requires legislative lobbyists to pay a registration fee of $250 and executive lobbyists to pay a registration fee of $500. The Georgia State Ethics Commission may assess a fee of $275 for each late activity report with an additional fee of $1,000 on the 7th or 15th day that the report is late, increasing to a late fee of $10,000. There are several other state ethics commissions that impose higher penalties than Bega for late filings. Therefore, OGE is proposing to increase the district's lobbying registration fees and penalties to an amount that is consistent with other jurisdictions and will encourage compliance with our laws. The amendment will increase the registration fee from $250 to $350 for for-profit entities and from $50 to $100 for nonprofit entities, and will increase the late filing fine from a maximum of $300 to $100 per day up to $5,000. We also recommend that a mandatory training requirement is imposed upon lobbyists. The third initiative is the Comprehensive Code of Conduct, CCC. Bega will again pursue passage of the CCC, which will consolidate the district's ethics laws. OGE's legal team has updated the CCC and will seek approval from the board before submitting an updated version of the legislation to the council. OGE has plans to engage with the ethics community for support and recommendations. And last are our increased efforts for outreach. OGE is planning to increase its outreach and advice-giving functions by providing on-site advisory services at various agencies. Essentially, OGE will revamp its roadshow, which operated before the pandemic, that included visiting community and government meetings and providing information on the agency. OGE will bring its Ask Bega program to the lobby or conference room area of agencies in effort to increase awareness of the office and the ethics rules. Finally, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to highlight OGE's performance and operations. I look forward to continuing to work with OGE staff on agency operations and fulfilling Bega's mission. I also look forward to working with this committee to meet our shared goals. I'm pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Well, thank you all for what I consider a very thorough report of activities with some challenges that we are facing. And let's see how we can get some of this done. But thank you very, very much for all of this information. I have to go back to the point Mr. Milhauser made in that he's questioning whether or not you have the capacity to do what you set out to do. And so the way I measure that is what of those items that you have reported are as your accomplishments are you particularly proud of? I think that will help us, and we'll start with you, Ms. Allen.
Well, thank you. I am very proud of our monitoring program, that we have our attorneys out in the field, so to speak, attending meetings. And through those meetings, we're kind of able to keep the OMA violations from happening because we can see during the meeting and before the meeting what needs to be corrected, so we can correct those on the spot. Now, what that showed me is that we are not really able to do this for our education entities, for our local school advisory teams, and also for our public charter school boards of trustees, just for the sheer number of those public bodies. We just don't have the staff available to be able to have that type of compliance monitoring program. And it has been so effective that that is what I would like to implement for all public bodies, that we just don't have the staff to do it right now. You'll hear more about requests from us during the budget hearing. Hope to address that. But I'm very proud that we're able to be out in the community with these public bodies, and they know who we are. They've been asking us questions after these meetings. They come to our trainings. So there is an interest there, especially with the Open Meetings Act, for public bodies to comply. The ANCs, as I mentioned before, they're not under the OMA, but the ANCs do reach out to us, again, because there's that perception that we are able to help with their meetings as well, which we do for parliamentary issues. We assist them with FOIA matters when they come up, but they're not under the OMA. But we do see how we could make a impact on the city with bringing them under the OMA, because these are our first line leaders. Remember, many of them go on to run for different public offices. So if we are able to train them in the beginning on parliamentary law and on open meetings, we think that will make a better pool of leaders for the district government in general. So I hope that you will agree with us on that.
Yes and no. Yes, because I think a transparent government is very helpful to the members of its society. So I don't have an issue there. But as a operating member of our legislature, I can tell you that we have very little opportunity as individuals charged with developing policy where we can have conversations, hash out the bugs, so to speak, without it being a flare on a camera somewhere, or thought that we are trying to cancel each other out, where we can just really meet. I mean, these are issues that are confronting our city today are very real. And I can do that in my neighborhood with my family, but I can't do it with my colleagues. Or I have to remember the open meetings provision. And I just think that if you really want good government, you have to have those conversations. Just wondering, have you given thought to how organizations can have a legitimate strategy session where they can iron out the, what is it, crossing the T and dotting the I's without the public layering in and saying, oh, that person doesn't know what they're doing, or that person is being obtruse or whatever.
I do understand that. And the Open Meetings Act does have provisions for where you can have closed meetings to have those types of discussions under certain circumstances. There's also a committee format for public bodies that they can meet in smaller groups and have the discussions and bring those conclusions to the larger body. But then those issues just in general, as you're talking about, I think that's when we are looking to form this commission to have everyone come together and say, well, what would really work for the district? Maybe we need to revamp our open meetings laws and our Freedom of Information Act laws to comport with how we want to be transparent. Because again, our laws are fairly new for the Open Meetings Act, but FOIA are not so new. So I think having a group of experts sit together and have those types of discussions and making the modifications that are necessary and bringing all the stakeholders together so that we can have something that works, I think is the best way to go to address your concern in
Yeah.
particular.
Ms. Hutchison, what is your take in thinking about at the board level, in thinking about how we need to modernize, believe it or not, Bega? Although it's one of the more modern institutions we have in our government.
What's my take? My take is that we support whatever initiatives either office brings to us. I don't think there's anything that they've suggested that we haven't backed them on. So those things that I outlined and I pointed to in my testimony from the best practices thing. I know every year we come here, for example, with the comprehensive code of conduct, and we still don't have that. But the board still supports that idea.
And so I imagine in a few days, you'll make sure I get a copy of this code of conduct.
Certainly.
All right, so we can take a look at that.
Okay.
Remember, I'm new, well, not new, because this is going in my second year, but new enough that I don't think I've had the occasion to look closely at the code of conduct. All these things sound good. I was in a hearing the other day and we were talking about a code for in the past, code for tenants, a code for developers, a code for how we handle our senior citizens. More and more people are wanting to have some rules or some understanding as to how we treat each other based on the roles that we play in society. So let's look at that code of conduct and see what we can do with that. I can't promise you anything. You know, we need 7 votes. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
On any matter, as always. But I wanted to be more specific. I think you have articulated to us what your top priorities are, what you're working on, and thank you very much for that, particularly the financial disclosure e-filing system, making it more accessible to everyone. But you also said that you're looking at categories of public service, in particular where perhaps those individuals have considerable influence in making their decisions and whether or not they should be required to do the financial disclosure. Can you talk a little more about maybe an example of some of the areas that you are concerned with? Because, and then I want to share with you, I'm trying to get some sort of classification of the types of of positions we have in our government so that we can have an understanding of how many fit into those different categories. That may be helpful. And that's in our committee too, so we can possibly get this work done.
Sure.
Sure.
So, again, we're currently in the process of making drafting a rulemaking that would include board and commission members who are not currently filing financial disclosure statements, but their duties either create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. So for example, there are certain board and commissions that engage in licensing. There are certain ones that give out grants and contracts, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they do not file a financial disclosure statement, which reveals the transparency of those board members' financial interests. So we believe that those people should be filers in order to let the public know that they're making decisions that are not based on their financial interests or the interests of a person that's closely affiliated with them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I guess that also means the ANCs, because they do a lot of grant making in their communities as well.
Correct. So ANCs are current filers. They don't file a full financial disclosure statement. They file a financial disclosure report, but they are current filers. They're also employees who make a certain salary amount. They file financial disclosure statements, and they're employees who do not meet the salary threshold but engage in certain duties. They're also designated as filers. So we already have the ANCs, but we want to capture those board and commissions who are not defined in the Ethics Act as filers, and they have not been captured anywhere else. We want to make the rulemaking for them.
Okay, and so when you say there are categories of employees that do not file, you're thinking of it based on the duties they have as opposed to their rank. Like, for instance, you could be a deputy director of an agency and really handle administrative, staff, and not really be a policy maker or a COO, spending the dollars. Is that, I'm just trying to break it down so the public understands who these new rules might affect.
Sure. So the rulemaking that we're initiating, that we're drafting, it will affect board and commission members that don't currently file. However, the comprehensive code of conduct, within there, we recommend that there's a salary threshold for filers. So for instance, your deputy director who does not engage in planning, licensing, grants or contracts, but they make a high salary, they will be captured as a filer under our proposal for the CCC, because there's a salary threshold, because they make so much, which I believe is currently GS9, but I'm not sure about that amount, but they make a certain amount of salary that requires them to file.
And approximately, how many employees do we estimate are at you said GS9, a DS9 grade?
Well,
and above?
Currently we received, in the last filing season, we received 4,426 public statements from public filers and 3,439 confidential statements from confidential filers.
And when you say confidential filer, what's a confidential filer?
A confidential filer is a person who does not meet the salary goals of a public filer, but they engage in activities such as land use planning, inspecting, licensing, regulating, auditing. Their duties create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. Their agency has designated them as a confidential filer, so they file their statements with the agency and now on our e-filing system, but their statement is not available to the public.
Okay. All right, that gives us a sense of, that's a big volume, and if you finding that is, you can easily manage that volume of traffic, so to speak.
Yes.
E-filings, okay. You also mentioned, you wanted to see upgrades and improvements in the lobbyist registration and reporting, system. And I agree that that certainly needs to be an area of concern that we began to resolve. But my question is today, if I'm a lobbyist, do you get reports, and how do you get reports? Like in my office, if someone comes in to see me and they want to talk about the ABC oil company, they're probably not going to state their true purpose. Some may not. Is there a form that I should maybe sign or initial saying that Joe Blow came by to talk about this company, and then I should file that with your office? Well, how do you see the current system working? And especially if you're going to try and use it as an opportunity to charge more. I mean, do you tell me a little more about how you see that working?
Sure. So currently, as the law stands, anyone who receives or expends funds in the amount of $250 or more, they're required to file an annual registration report with OGE. And then they file quarterly activity reports. So the law puts the responsibility on the lobbyists to file those reports and their activity reports. We at Bega, we provide them with notice of this filing requirement. We provide them with training, and we also do public announcements, of course, on our website. There is not currently a form that you as a public official are required to submit. However, the lobbyist activity report, it includes the name of the lobbyist, any expenditures, any communications that they had with a public official, the name of the public official, any information that is required to actually make it transparent that they're lobbying. We're proposing that we increase the registration fees and late filing penalties, because what we've seen is that lobbyists who are late, they're substantially late. For example, we have a lobbyist that was recently discovered to be late 118 days from filing a registration report. As the current law stands, that lobbyist only has to pay a $300 fine. If we increase the late filing penalty, we can fine that lobbyist up to $5,000. So the increase in fees, we believe, will increase compliance with the laws, as well as make our fees in the district more consistent with other jurisdictions.
Okay, and I understand what the increase in fees will do, or at least perceived to do. What I am trying to understand is how do you know whether or not the report you get is accurate? Is that important? Or are we assuming that lobbyists are truth tellers?
Well, the form itself is certified, so we're assuming that their certification means that it's an honest and truthful statement.
All right. Both of you answer so many of our questions in your presentation, so I'm just having to sort of skip around. Forgive me. Am I correct in that you indicated that the ANC meetings are not under the Open Meetings Act?
Yes, that's correct. They have their own set of rules regarding meetings. But however, a lot of them do think that they are under the Open Meetings Act. So hopefully that means that they know that they are required to be open and transparent. But I think that allowing us to have oversight over those meetings would be of assistance to the ANCs and for the public so that they would be aware that the rules are the same for most public bodies.
I appreciate hearing that. When I was a commissioner and the commission chair, I thought we were under the Open Meetings Act. I made sure we had an agenda. It was published. We have a, as ANCs set their rules. And so we had a set of rules, regulations that we followed, which did stipulate that we had, the day before you get your agenda, in fact, 3 days when we set the agenda to make sure, all of that. And of course, a process, an orderly process for conducting the meeting. So when you think about the ANCs formally coming under the Open Meetings Act, what do you have in mind beyond making sure there's an agenda, making sure that there's like opportunity for the public to respond or to comment at every meeting? That was another provision that we used. So what are your things, what are you thinking about when you say, let's put the ANCs under Open Meetings Act?
Well, I am thinking that it would be advantageous for us to be able to assist them with their meetings and for us to also monitor them as well on behalf of the public to make sure that they are all doing what they need to do, and also that the public has a place to go if there are problems with those meetings, that they can come to us, and we're subject matter experts on meetings and we can help bring them into compliance. So that is my vision for the ANCs. And again, so that they get that training from us, because we do have a comprehensive training program, and that's something that we do very well. And I would like to see them be able to take advantage of that from the Office of Open Government. And I think, again, since we are subject matter experts, we can answer their questions, we can provide them with assistance on numerous issues. And I think a lot of time the ANCs, from the sheer number, and they have a very small office of ANCs, that they could use the assistance.
You also mentioned, in addition to the ANCs, educational associations, entities, charter schools, the LE, I think it's LE.
Local School Advisory.
Yes.
LSATs.
LEAs.
Yes.
That body that meets regularly. I'm just wondering, is there, I know you don't have the capacity to be at everything. I mean, you mentioned your staff size.
Yes.
And many of these meetings occur simultaneously. So is there a thought about having an electronic monitoring system where perhaps any entity that falls under the law that does not have the capacity to transmit, let's say through Zoom or something like that, that we in turn put in place a process where they can open their meeting through the proceedings and close the meeting, and so that you would be able to monitor these entities. In other words, if for instance, we're able to do these great things that you want, I'm just trying to figure out how does it get staffed? Because as you know, we're kind of flat this year, first time in 15 years.
Yes.
And that means that an idea about a democracy, all those good things that we say we subscribe to in our modern society, are not as meaningful as some of the other things that we are saddled with dealing with, like, public safety initiatives, making sure people have food and our housing and what have you. So I'm just thinking as we're talking, at what tier will your concerns, which become my concerns, fall when we are trying to look at the budget? So trying to think of a way to,
I
get
do
this done.
understand that we have some budget challenges
Yes, yes.
this year. So we've only asked for one attorney to help us with education. We didn't ask it for any funding related to ANCs. If they came under the OMA, we looked at the council to say we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but it would require additional persons to manage that new responsibility. But as far as electronic monitoring, yes, I think if we are able to have a component in the law where the council sees to it that people are allowed to continue with online meetings, I think that lends to more enforcement, that our office, albeit small, we're able to do more if we don't have to go all across the city. However, we do encourage hybrid meetings. A lot of people are doing that now, such as we are, where you have a component of folks in person, but then you're also online and able to see the meetings. So that helps us out as compliance officers to take a look at those meetings online in real time sometimes, and then sometimes after the fact if there's a complaint. But I think just thinking about the public just needs somewhere to go to address their concerns with these meetings. And I think with the ANCs, that's where we're coming from, because we hear from the public when they are not able to attend a meeting or when something goes wrong and they're not able to get redress. And right now, we're not able to do anything but refer it to the Inspector General, who has a large caseload himself. But we would like to be able to, again, offer that assistance to those individuals in the community who may be having a problem with a meeting. But again, going on to training, once you're able to get folks trained and teach them how to conduct meetings that are open, that are orderly as well, because we do offer parliamentary procedure training. I think it helps the long run. We do see kind of a decrease once we're out there, and we're able to, a decrease in complaints once we're out with the public bodies and out with the community. So I think with ANCs, it would be particularly helpful. And yes, technology does help with the budget. So we would figure it out. I would say, should the council in its wisdom decide to make those legislative changes, hopefully there would be a staff enhancement, but we understand the budget constraints as they are. But I think the public would greatly benefit from a well-trained and monitored ANCs. And I'm not here to say that they're doing a bad job, because they're not. For the most part, ANCs are doing a good job with meetings, but we do get complaints, and we'd like to be able to address them effectively.
All right, so it sounds like Vega is a true watchdog of the I guess public trust as it relates to proceedings that well, you don't monitor all of the meetings that may happen in the community. You're just concerned with those that are engaging the government and government expenditures. Or are you
We
just?
monitor all of the public bodies, so all of the entities that fall under the Open Meetings Act, we do monitor. We are, I guess, because of the sheer number of public bodies and the small number of staff that we have, we do the best we can to get to as many as we can.
All right, but you do not monitor like civic associations?
No, just
and
government.
private, like DC for Democracy and those?
No, ma'am.
Okay, entities, exactly. That's what I was trying to distinguish, that although they have a strong feeling that they have a mission within the community, but any entity that receives I guess, government funds that considers itself an organization or a group of individuals, you can monitor. They would fall under the Open Meetings Act. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think I think this is a real great subject matter, but I don't want us to spend all evening because I know that there's another big agency that wants to talk to us. But I did have a question about the FOIA. About this the collection and retention of records, is particularly electronic records. That is primarily emails and things like that, I would
Correct.
assume. What's going on in that arena? Are you finding that more and more we're using electronic records, but more and more we're discarding them? Is that the issue?
Well, one of our large issues, I think we talk about each year, is with email. So with email, it's a retention issue. We do keep everything. So we have a large body of emails from 1998 to present. So every email that has been sent to and from CC'd in the district government, we have. So we have recommended through the board, through our best practices report, that we adopt the capstone approach with the federal government uses, so that certain email accounts are permanent based on the individual's title. So that's one of the approaches we recommended, but we're just looking at the district and thinking that we should have a manageable records retention policy for our body of emails. Right now, the Office of the Chief Technology Officer is I guess, a digital warehouse, and they also have their physical servers that have these emails, and it's a cost to the district. So some of them very much have historical value, and we should keep forever, but we should figure that out. How do we manage that? Now, how that relates to FOIA is when you have a search for those records, that search can go through a large body of records, which is a good thing. However, it takes a long time. So if it was managed correctly as far as retention, I think that our FOIA officers would have an easier time to locate records that requesters are asking for. So that is one of our recommendations with electronic records. And we can go into devices. We are using all types of technology now to do the business of government. And when FOIA was enacted, we were mostly paper. You'd have the carbon copy, the pink copy, the green copy, and you'd file them in different places. So FOIA was really designed for that type of record keeping, and we just don't really do that anymore. So that's again why we are supporting the DC Open Government Coalition's suggestion that we bring folks together, and we're experts within and without the government, to figure out how we're doing business and what's the best way to retain records, to dispose of records properly that we're no longer using, to send records to archives and things of that nature. So it's a big deal, and I'm so happy to hear that you're concerned about it. And we are here to offer the committee any more information or assistance that you need in making decisions around record keeping, because we are a robust government, and we are creating records every single day on multiple devices, whether it be telephones, computers, handheld devices, the like.
Well, I would be I'm very anxious to see your thoughts in writing as it relates to this commission. I think it probably is necessary, because I'm sitting here wondering, what's the real point? I mean, it's a lot of material to go through, and we do not have Department of Defense computer system that can, zip it but it just seems like it's really an awful lot. And a big, as you say, a big expense for our government. And so I would like to see what you are proposing for that. I think that would be very, very helpful. I also think it would be worthwhile to take a look at the ethics piece, because it looks like we don't have that many ethics violators. We have people who may be confused or not know what the rules are. So I just wonder if we don't need to look at the whole arena of ethics violations. Or maybe we just need to get more information out almost periodically. You know, we looked at the issue of sexual harassment, and one of the conclusions we reached is the need for there to be periodic reminders. You know, we're talking about human beings that are in touch with each other. I don't mean like physically always touching, but you know, we're talking to each other all the time. And it just, I think we reached a point where we need to remind people of what does that really mean, you know, in the workplace. It's not in the neighborhood. It's not at the bar. It's not in your home. It is your work environment. So I don't know if that kind of continuous training. I know people can reach out, agencies can reach out to you, but maybe if it happens like being every, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, something pops up on my computer. I don't know, it might make a difference. I'm always thinking that the more we remind people and the more frequently they get the message, the more likely they are to adhere to it. I just wondered, Ms. Cooks, you have a thought on that?
Yes, I agree with that. And that's one reason why we are revamping our ethics roadshow to actually take staff outside of the agency and put them in other agencies to make them visible so people can know about the agencies. They can become more familiar with the ethics rules. They can have a reminder about the rules. So that's one reason why we're revamping our ethics roadshow. And we're going to start that in the next coming months. And the second thing, as far as outreach, is that we do continue to host our monthly ethics trainings. So we host those online, a virtual setting. And what we found is that when we host them as webinars, we get more attendance than in person. So we are going to continue that effort, and we're going to start our in-person trainings again since we've moved to a new office location. So I hear you, and I agree wholeheartedly
Yeah.
that employees need to have a reminder about ethics.
I will share with you, as an elected official, I appreciate our secretary's office reminding us of what the 90-day prior to election deadline means. And we usually get that information like, you know, 2 months before it's the 90-day deadline. And so I kind of, now I know I haven't run for reelection that many times, I'm only in my 3rd term, but each time that I've gotten it, it builds in an understanding of what I can do, you know, make sure you're not creating flyers and stuff like that. So it's very, very helpful. Make sure that any newsletter that goes out, your photograph, I think, can only be 1 photograph per page or something like that. You know, just general rules. And so then you build it into your annual plan of how you're going to make sure that you are in compliance. So I think, you know, the redundancy is really good. It'll help.
Understood.
Yeah, I think it will help. And I appreciate learning about the many different opportunities people have asked for an opinion or advice from you. So you've already covered that. Well, on this issue of lobbyists, because you know they're very fragrant in our government, in and around the government. I've just wondered, have you given thought to the nonprofits that do a really great job of lobbying for their position too, and whether or not they should be under the lobbyist law?
Yes, nonprofits are currently required to register as lobbyists. That is your 501(c)(3) entities. They're required to file annual registration reports. And they have a registration fee of $50. And they're also required to file those quarterly activity reports. So lobbyists are covered, nonprofit lobbyists are covered under the current Ethics Act.
Let me ask you, do you publicize those reports or on like your website or something like that so that, you know, individuals can look and see if they have been lobbied and not know that they were lobbied?
Yes, we do. Our e-filing system, there's a public search option that lists all of the registrations for for-profit entities and nonprofits, as well as all of their activity reports. So that is available on our Bega website. If you want to go to the lobbyist section, since we upgraded our website, it's easier to find now. You would go to the lobbyist section and then you can search for a lobbyist registration or report.
Okay. I think that's very good. That helps to bring about that transparency that you're very concerned with. When we talk about the Office of Government Ethics, are there any aspects of the system that you feel need updating? We talked a lot about the Open Meetings Act, and so we know that there are some areas that we'd like to buttress. So I was just wondering if the ethics side of it also needs some upgrading.
Yes, I would go back to my conversation about the CCC, the Comprehensive Code of Conduct. So currently, as it stands, the Code of Conduct is comprised of about 8 different statutes that make up the ethics rules. And there's a different set of ethics rules that apply to executive branch employees than those that apply to the council. So the CCC would basically consolidate those rules into one place, one central location, and we would not have those 8 different statutes that make up our ethics rules. We'll have one set of ethics rules under the Ethics Act that would apply to executive branch employees, legislative branch employees, as well as contractors. So we believe that that contractors who perform services for the district as employees, you think they're employees, but they're actually contractors, they should be subject to the ethics rules as well. So I think the passage of the Comprehensive Code of Conduct will fill a lot of gaps within our ethics rules.
Okay, well, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the Office of Campaign Finance that has some work to do with the procurement law that does require, there's some new rules for implementation as it relates to contractors that are working for the government and whether or not they can make a financial contribution to a candidate running for public office. But in that instance, the law originates with the Office of Contracts and Procurement. So I'm hearing you wanting to leap into that arena a little bit. So let me think about how that might work. I know that our government is very interrelated. We don't act like we are, but we are all very interrelated. And you know, those agencies I just mentioned are in other parts of in other committees, okay, but we may have to talk with them. Campaign finance is in this committee, so maybe you can have a robust discussion with Ms. Montgomery and see where we can go with that. Maybe Ms. Hutchinson, you can talk to her and see if there's any nexus there.
And just to clarify, when I refer to contractors, I mean contract employees.
Contract employees, that's different, yes. The W-2.
The I-9, well, I-9, I think.
Yes, okay, all right. So we can just scratch that conversation we just had, because we're really talking about contracted employees. Okay, thank you. What is the status of two contracts that you had under FY 23 and 24? One is a contract with LRN for 272,000. And then 136,000 in FY, which is 136,000 in each of the FY years, FY 23 and 24.
So LRN is the vendor that hosts our learning management system. It's a online database that provides on-demand ethics training for employees and public officials. It houses several of our ethics trainings, ranging from financial disclosure statement, ethical culture carriers, our specific rules about conflicts of interest, gifts, post-employment, outside employment. So LRN actually hosts that database for us. Employees are able to go to the Bega website, click on self-guided trainings, and then register for the LMS.
Okay, thank you. The key word here is self-guided trainings, right?
Correct.
Thank you. So what is Bega's protocol for referring complaints to other district agencies, such as the Office of Human Rights?
So when we receive a complaint from on the ethics side that we do not have jurisdiction over the allegations, I would send a letter or maybe even give a phone call to an agency that I believe has jurisdiction, such as the Office of Human Rights, and then send the letter to them explaining the allegations within the complaint, explaining that Bega does not have jurisdiction and maybe your agency does. And then we would let the complainant know that the matter has been referred to another district government agency.
So what kind of examples can you give me of that case where you don't have jurisdiction and you're sending it somewhere else? What do you have jurisdiction over?
We have jurisdiction to enforce the code of conduct on the ethics side.
What does that mean?
And the code of conduct, again, is about 8 statutes that are designed to regulate the ethical conduct of district employees. So most of those rules are found within the district personnel manual, and they deal with accepting gifts. They deal with nepotism, outside employment that conflicts with your official government duties, post-employment regulations, misuse of government resources, and things of that nature. So if we get a complaint that states that my supervisor has discriminated against me because I'm a woman, that is something that is outside of the code of conduct. It deals with discrimination. We don't have jurisdiction to enforce that. So we would send that matter to the Office of Human Rights.
So where would you send a complaint of, I've been moved to another office because I complained about a situation that I witnessed. So my boss is retaliating against me because my boss was involved in the situation, and my boss knows that I saw it.
That could be a complaint that we would send to OHR, or we could send it to the Department of Human Resources as a personnel matter. But it just depends on what the complainant is alleging that they witnessed, because there's also a retaliation provision within the ethics rules that prohibits employees from being retaliated against for filing an ethics complaint. So if that person is an ethics complaint filer and they come back to us and say that I'm being retaliated against because of that filing, then we would investigate that and find out whether the allegations are actually true.
Okay, so let's say you investigate it and you find out it's true. What do you do next?
Then we can present the matter to the ethics board and bring an enforcement proceeding against the person who has been engaging in retaliation.
So you can act as jury and judge.
No, the board acts as the jury and the
Okay.
judge. I just act as the prosecutor in that particular instance.
All right. I know I'm going a little deep here, but I'm really trying to understand the many offices that we have that I consider are engaged in compliance. And I personally believe there is some overlapping. And so when I ask the questions, I'm trying to just see, maybe there's a little plug over here that doesn't fit over there. So just trying to, and when you have a flat budget, you know where I'm headed. So I would be remiss if I didn't at least look at the services that we provide in our government. It seems that my committee is most concerned with compliance and really servicing the rest of the government. And so I just want to make sure that we are all understanding what services we have, how they're used, and there's eliminate, or that there's not too much duplication in the modern world. So I'm asking these questions. Very interesting, very powerful. Thank you. Do you still have an outside vendor that runs your websites?
Bega.dc.gov is run by Octo. We run our other site, open-dc.gov, in-house. We do have a training component that is operated by an outside vendor that we examine each fiscal year. That's our parliamentary procedure training portal that also has information on the Open Meetings Act, but the websites are run internally by the government.
Okay, so Drupal is the training component?
That's the underlying operating system. I think that's the proper technical term
Okay,
that
okay.
the website runs on.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time, your attention, and I appreciate your really glowing reports. Thank you very, very much. And you're going to send me a couple of things, and we're going to see what we can do to keep our government rolling forward in the right direction. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we will hear from the our Inspector General. He will talk about the Office of the Inspector General, which is our primary agency tasked with preventing fraud, mismanagement, and abuses of power within the government. The OIG is the only local agency that can investigate all aspects of our government. The OIG independently audits, inspects and investigates matters pertaining to the district government in order to, one, prevent and detect corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse, promote economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability, inform stakeholders about issues related to the District of Columbia, programs and operations, and recommends and tracks the implementation of corrective action. And we do not have, do we have a public witnesses? No. All right, so you're it. Thank you very much for being here. You raise your right hand and we will swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete? Thank you. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds and members of the committee. I'm Daniel W. Lucas, Inspector General for the District of Columbia. My team and I are pleased to appear before the committee and provide an overview of the OIG, highlight our accomplishments in the fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 to date, and discuss the OIG's plans for the remainder of the fiscal year. Before I begin, I want to thank the dedicated and talented OIG staff, who on a daily basis demonstrate their integrity, professionalism, and dedication to providing oversight to the district. The successes I discussed today are directly attributable to the OIG staff. Now I want to refresh the committee and the public on the OIG's mission. Specifically, the OIG conducts independent financial and performance audits, inspections, evaluations, and investigations of district government operations, keeps the mayor, council, and district government department and agency heads fully and currently informed about problems and deficiencies and the necessity for and progress of corrective actions. Reports expeditiously to the U.S. Attorney when we believe there has been a violation of federal or district criminal law, and provide leadership, coordinate, and recommend policies to promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, and to prevent and detect corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse in district government programs and operations. Unlike federal offices of Inspector General, whose oversight is focused on programs and operations of their respective federal agencies, and other state and local offices of Inspectors General with varying oversight responsibilities and functions, the district's OIG is a unique government accountability organization. The district's OIG has a broad range of oversight responsibilities that are typically found across multiple oversight entities. The OIG's FY23 oversight responsibility encompasses the district's $19.8 billion gross operating budget, $10.5 billion capital budget, and a budgeted workforce of approximately 40,000 employees. These resources are apportioned across over 140 departments, agencies, offices, boards, and commissions, which collectively execute over 1,400 programs and activities. With an understanding of the OIG's mission and oversight responsibilities, I would like to highlight our results during FY23. Collectively, our work in FY23 generated $165.5 million in monetary benefits to the district through criminal and civil judgments obtained through OIG investigations, and recommendations to improve district programs and operations that, if implemented, would generate monetary benefits for the district. As seen in Figure 1, when comparing our FY23 budget to our oversight outcomes, the OIG's overall return on investment was $6 for every $1 invested. The OIG promotes economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of district government programs and operations. We do this through our audit unit, inspections and evaluation unit that conduct engagements to determine whether resources were obtained at reasonable costs while meeting timelines and quality considerations, economy, how well resources were converted into operational output efficiency, and the extent to which district program or operation is achieving its goals and objectives effectiveness. AU and I&E engagements were identified through a comprehensive risk assessment process and communicated to the district government and residents in our FY24 audit and inspection plan. Allow me to highlight AU and I&E outputs and outcomes during FY23. First, AU conducts independent performance audits, financial audits, and attestation engagements of district government operations and programs. AU's successes during the fiscal year performance period include publishing 6 reports authored by OIG staff, which included 51 recommendations to improve district programs and operations, identifying over $150 million in potential monetary benefits, overseeing the administration and release of 3 individual contractor-prepared reports, an additional 20 reports from the district's FY22 annual comprehensive financial audit. I am pleased to report that in May 2023, the Government Finance Research Center at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and Merit Research Services ranked the District of Columbia first among states and territories in ACRA audit timeliness. One notable AU report released in FY23 was the audit of the district's Department of Employee Services processing of unemployment insurance claims during the pandemic. This report made 14 recommendations to DOES. If implemented, our recommended corrective actions will enhance the accuracy and completeness of unemployment claims, leverage data to assess DOES's contractor performance, identify trends or non-compliance that could expose the district to financial risk of improper billing, and achieve the agency's strategic objective of improving efficiency, integrity, and performance of UI benefits. Although the report was retrospective, the findings remain timely and can be instructive as DOES transitions to its new UI benefits system. Inspections and Evaluations Unit. I&E conducts inspections and evaluations of district programs to improve the oversight, management, execution of programs, stewardship of resources, and adherence to district and federal laws and policies. During FY23, I&E published 3 reports and provided 21 recommendations to district agencies to improve programs and operations. I want to highlight 2 I&E reports issued in FY23. The Special Evaluation of DC Main Streets Program, and the Closeout Letter on District Contracted Services. First, at the request of Council, I&E evaluated the administration of the DC Main Streets Grant application and awards process, as well as selected grantees' compliance with grant agreement requirements. The report made 17 recommendations to District Department of Small and Local Business Development, DSLBD, to enhance policy, procedures, and processes to increase efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency in the DC Main Streets program. Second, our closeout letter in District Contractor Services identifies systemic opportunities to strengthen procurement-related internal control systems and improve the oversight and management of contractor services. I'm pleased to see the Council has leveraged these 2 reports in drafting Bill 25-0659, the Public Incentive Transparency and Accountability Act of 2024, introduced on January 8th, 2024. As our oversight work has identified, and as Bill 25-0659 considers, the ability to recapture improper payments is a vital tool to protect the district's finite resources. I look forward to working with this committee as it deliberates the bill during this council period. Preventing and detecting corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse. In addition to promoting good practices in district programs and operations, the OIG works to prevent and detect corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse within the district government. Corruption is the use of authority or power for personal gain, while fraud is the intentional use of some dishonest means to deprive another of their money, property, or legal rights. When complaints are brought to the OIG's attention, these allegations are evaluated, investigated, and expeditiously reported to the U.S. Attorney's Office when there are reasonable grounds to believe there has been a criminal violation. Beyond criminal matters, we investigate allegations of government waste, abuse of position or authority, and other activities that may have impeded an agency's ability to accomplish its mission. To prevent and detect these matters, the OIG's Risk Assessment and Future Planning Unit, Investigations Unit, and Medicaid Fraud Control Unit work together, examining conduct that may constitute a violation of government law, rule, regulation, or policy. Risk Assessment and Future Planning operates the OIG's confidential hotline and conducts administrative investigations of non-criminal waste, abuse, and mismanagement allegations. RAFP also supports the OIG's oversight work through data analytics, aggregating and distilling open source information to inform our oversight work, developing our annual audit and inspection plan, and communicating risks to district agencies through various mechanisms. During FY23 performance period, RAFP evaluated over 900 hotline complaints, which resulted in assisting 76 complainants to an alternative avenue of redress, referring 19 complaints to district agencies for appropriate action, referring 14 complaints to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, and transferring 150 complaints to one of the OIG's operational units. The remaining complaints either did not have enough actionable information or the complaint was made anonymously and RAFP could not follow up to ascertain additional details. Regarding prevention, RAFP aggregated various information sources, including hotline complaints, to develop the OIG's FY24 audit and inspection plan. The plan includes our annual high risk list, which identifies opportunities to strengthen internal controls within the specific district programs and operations, or areas that may have a heightened vulnerability to fraud, waste, abuse, or mismanagement. Additionally, RAFP communicated certain matters to district agencies through management implication reports, which are issued to inform multiple district agencies of a matter identified during our oversight work. OIG mirrors are transmitted to affected district agencies and are publicly available on the OIG's website. Regarding detection, the OIG's IU and Mafuku conduct criminal and civil investigations of misconduct related to district programs and operations. The investigations unit work during FY23 performance period focused on complex public corruption and financial fraud matters. During FY23, IU opened 100 investigations and successfully referred 32 cases to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia for prosecution. The outcomes of IU's work in FY23 resulted in $1.1 million in criminal restitution orders and fines, $84,000 in referrals to the Office of the Attorney General for civil recoupment, and 11 criminal convictions, indictments, or charges. A significant investigative outcome during FY23 was the sentencing of the former executive director and director of operations and finance for the now defunct DC Children and Youth Investment Trust Corporation, or DC Trust. According to court documents, the defendant stole at least $155,000 from DC Trust for personal use. The OIG initiated this investigation shortly after DC Trust dissolution in 2016. During our investigation, we and our law enforcement partners obtained and analyzed evidence, thoroughly analyzed DC Trust financial records, and presented the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecutorial consideration. Through our investigative work, a District of Columbia District Court grand jury indicted both defendants in January of 2020, and the OIG supported the United States Attorney's prosecution through the plea agreements hearing in November of 2022 and resulting in sentencing hearing on May 11th of 2023. The Medicaid Fraud Control Unit conducts criminal and civil investigations of alleged fraud committed against the district's Medicaid program and alleged and allegations of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of individuals who reside in Medicaid-funded facilities or who received Medicaid-covered services. 2 Mafuku attorneys are designated as Special Assistant U.S. Attorneys who work with the United States Attorney's Office and D.C. Superior Court Division's Major Crimes Section to prosecute Mafuku cases. During FY23, the Mafuku opened 50 investigations concerning fraud committed against the district Medicaid program and opened 37 investigations concerning alleged abuse, neglect, or exploitation committed against district Medicaid beneficiaries. The outcomes of Mafuku's work resulted in over $9.6 million in criminal and civil recoveries for the district and 14 criminal convictions, indictments, or charges. I'd like to highlight 2 investigations during the FY23 performance period, which demonstrate the Mafuku's investigative and prosecutorial mission. Specifically, in July 2023, an owner of a mental health services provider pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud in connection with a scheme to pay bribes and kickbacks to district Medicaid beneficiaries. As detailed in the defendant's plea agreement, the owner billed the district's Medicaid program for mental health services, including community support, a service which community support workers provide rehabilitative and educational support to mental health patients in clinical settings and communities. Based on the amount paid for community support services by the district's Medicaid program that were not delivered or procured through bribes and kickbacks, the actual loss to the district's Medicaid program was at least $3.3 million. This investigation highlights the Mafuku's strong partnership with the Department of Healthcare Finance's Division of Program Integrity, which initially referred this matter and provided support during the investigation. In June of 2023, a member of the public was sentenced in the D.C. Superior Court to 24 months in prison and 5 years of supervised release on 1 felony count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult or elderly person. This matter was initially reported to the district's Adult Protective Services and subsequently referred to the Mafuku by the Office of the Attorney General. According to court documents, the defendant obtained access to a family member's debit card who suffered from cognitive impairments and was hospitalized at a skilled nursing facility located in the district. In total, the defendant was able to obtain more than $51,000 for personal use from his hospitalized family member who could not make decisions for himself or communicate meaningfully. The defendant was ordered to pay $51,886 in restitution. This successful case outcome was investigated and prosecuted by the Mafuku's SALSA in coordination with the Major Crime Section of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. The outputs and outcomes of AU, INE, RAFP, IU, and Mafuku would not be possible without the support of OIG's business management, quality management, executive secretariat, and external affairs divisions, and the Office of General Counsel. Collectively, these functions constitute the OIG system. No part of this system is more important than another, nor could one operate successfully without the others. For additional insights on our FY23 successes, I recommend reading the OIG's FY2023 report on activities. In the first 4 months of FY24, the OIG has continued to build on the successes I've shared today. Notwithstanding ongoing and planned oversight engagements, the OIG will collectively focus our efforts on the following areas during the remainder of FY24. Promoting economy efficiency and effectiveness. First, the OIG is engaging district agencies on the implementation status of our recommendations. It's important to note that several OIG findings and corresponding recommendations include quantifiable savings that, if acted upon, would allow the district to recoup funds or enhance the efficiency and efficacy of current programs and operations. An update on implementation efforts will be shared with the district and public once completed this year. Second, the OIG released its Oversight Programs Assessment Survey earlier this month. This survey identified district agencies with internal oversight functions such as audit, evaluation, or investigation. Armed with these results, later this year, the OIG will establish a district oversight community of practice. The oversight community of practice will serve as a venue for district oversight practitioners to collaborate and share knowledge across the district government. The goal of the oversight community of practice is to build the district's collective oversight capacity. Finally, the OIG has developed an internal control assessment program that leverages the U.S. Government Accountability Office's standards of internal control in the federal government to assess the maturity of an agency's system of internal controls. An effective system of internal control helps district agencies adapt to shifting environments, evolving demands, changing risks, and new priorities. The benefit to ICAP that it is not a traditional OIG engagement that results in a formal written report. Rather, ICAP is a consultative and collaborative process between the OIG and district agencies to improve its system of internal control. During FY24, the OIG will continue to market the ICAP to district agencies, preventing and detecting corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse. The OIG continues to engage the district community through various outreach events and activities. In FY24, the OIG will continue its focused engagement with district residents to inform them on issues related to elderly and vulnerable adult abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Unfortunately, these matters are pervasive and go unreported to the appropriate authorities. The OIG's outreach efforts, including our partnership with the Department of Justice's Elder Justice Initiative, are designed to increase district residents' awareness and understanding of venues to report these types of allegations. We continue to work with the Executive and Council on advancing legislative amendments to enhance our ability to investigate allegations of criminal misconduct. Specifically, the OIG has proposed draft legislation that clearly defines OIG criminal investigators in the DC Code. This amendment is critically needed to ensure OIG criminal investigators' statutory authorities and limitations are unambiguous, thereby reducing the risk of adverse statutory interpretation should our work or activities be questioned in a court of law. Later this year, the OIG will initiate a district-wide evaluation to identify fragmentation, overlap, and duplication in programs and operations. The utility of this evaluation is twofold. First, to ensure district-wide systems comprised of multiple agencies are functioning as intended and delivering and maximizing outcomes. And second, the results will be able to inform the preparation and deliberation of future years' budgets. In conclusion, Chairperson Bonds and members of the committee, as the district faces the potential of reduced resources, the OIG's oversight work has never been more important. Taxpayer dollars must be safeguarded and district resources must be maximized. Before I answer the committee's questions, I'd like to again recognize the hard work and dedication of the OIG staff. I'd also like to acknowledge the executive and council for their unwavering support of the OIG. I look forward to our continued collaboration with this committee, advancement of the OIG's legislative priorities, and providing world-class oversight of the district government programs and operations. This concludes my testimony, and I welcome the opportunity to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for that outstanding testimony. I do have a few questions. And looking at your testimony, I wanted to ask on page 3, where you indicate in 2023 return on investments, your chart indicates I guess this is 2.7 million funds to be recouped, and then the 82 million funds put to better use. Can you give me some examples so that we're real clear as to what falls in those categories?
Sure. typically, when we conduct our audits and inspections and evaluations, where we find an agency has made an investment in something and perhaps not gotten the return in that investment, we'll say that that money could be put to better use. Or if an agency has, let me think, if an agency has invested in a particular process where we question that process, you know, if they could have spent that money on a better process or a better piece of equipment, that's where those costs are.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think it's important that we move the public along with us as we are understanding the testimony. And all of that amounts to approximately $165.5 million. That along with the other categories that you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the public is okay. You mentioned that you're in talking about promoting economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And this is work that's done via the audit unit and the inspection and evaluation unit. You said number 3 was the extent to which a district program or operation is achieving its goals and objectives. In other words, the effectiveness. Is there a particular situation that stands out that you can give us as an example? What I'm doing is trying to categorize these characteristics that you have given us of the work that your audit unit and I&E unit did, so that we're real clear as to what agency or what service delivery system falls within that purview that you examined.
Sure. In one of our audits into DCHA and their financial management, one of the things that we found is DCHA's budget execution didn't follow the CFO's processes. There's no requirement to, but their processes didn't lead to them monitoring how their money was being spent. And so in some instances, we found them to be overspending in some areas and underspending in other areas. And, you know, they were not aware of that until we brought it to their attention.
Is that the only independent agency that doesn't follow the CFO in your findings?
No, well, this particular engagement only focused on DCHA, but there are probably others who don't have to follow the CFO's budgeting processes.
I don't know what your capacity is, but I would think now might be the time to take a look at some of the other independent entities.
Okay, noted.
You know, I just really think we really need to know more about how the public dollar is spent. And I think what you have devised here in your audit unit, inspection and evaluation, lends itself. I mean, you've got goals that you are articulating. And so let's see if we have goals across the board. You heard what Bega had to say about conformity and, you know, having that code of conduct. I think equally is important to know if we have standards in place that work across the financial picture, so to speak.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we believe, you know, a system of internal controls is so important. and we've developed our ICAP program. It's, for agencies to get assistance in understanding, their agencies that they wouldn't otherwise understand in their daily activities. We have our agencies trying to do the best that they can with what they have. And sometimes when you have an outside entity come in and just, give you some consultation, on how you can do things better, it's just so helpful. And we stay out of these situations, where we're spending money where we shouldn't, we're not monitoring our budgets, we're putting pressure, on the district's budget and so on and so forth.
I would love to see the day when we would set goals, have standards, objectives, and then be able to measure the outcome. And I think that is the dream of everyone when we spend $1 in our household. And so I think about DC government, and it's no longer a tiny little bucket. It's a big bucket. It's bigger than 23 state annual budgets.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
lot of
complex
money,
organization.
a lot of money. It's an awesome responsibility. And I figure since you can fly over all of it, why not ask you about it?
Yeah,
So,
we are in a unique position to be able to do that.
yes, thank you very much. You had you indicated this is particularly of concern to us because it's in our committee, and that is you mentioned the district's Department of Employment Services, the processing of unemployment insurance claims during the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic is hopefully behind us. Will, in examining the implementation by DOS we're going to examine it with DOES when they come before us later in the month. But of the 14 recommendations that you developed, has there been any ongoing conversation with the agency about addressing any of those recommendations, or have you gotten feedback that disputes some of the recommendations? I remember DHCD once disputed a couple of your recommendations. I wondered if DOES has done that, or are they understanding that this might be an opportunity to do better?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we did make 14 recommendations to DOES, and they agreed with 2. We still believe that those other 12 recommendations are good recommendations. So we're going to follow up on our recommendations with DOES. I believe within the past couple of weeks, we sent a letter to DOES informing them of our intention to follow up on those recommendations and ask them what they've done since the publication of our report.
So I note that you have about 120, 130 employees. Big government. You say it's 40,000, some say it's 37,000, whatever, that's a huge number.
It is.
And so, and I think you mentioned 140 entities, agencies and what have you. What is your capacity and what is your need if you were really the field marshal on this issue?
Yeah. So we weren't prepared to answer that question in this hearing, but in the budget hearing, we will be able to answer that question.
Okay.
But in short, the scope of our oversight, it's quite immense. We obviously do the best at what we can. And some of the tools that we use to make sure we're focused in the right area is we conduct internal risk assessments. We pay attention to everything that's going on in the district and try and figure out which is the highest risk that's going to prevent the district from performing at peak efficiency. And obviously, as I sit here, right now, I'll tell you, I simply don't have enough, to do everything that I would like to do, or everything that the council, wants me to focus on, or the executive wants me to focus on. We would indeed need more resources, and we'll put pen to paper and try to figure out what does ideal look like for the Office of Inspector General to oversee over better than $19 billion budget, 37 to 40,000 employees, and many, many programs. What does that really look like in order for the district to have confidence, that the district is functioning as best as it can?
And also in that planning, would you give us some indication as to what would be a process for prioritizing? Because you can't do everything,
Right.
and there's no expectation. I mean, you'd need, 1,000 employees to do that. And that is not possible. Also, the added ingredient is to inform as to what might be the amount of savings or revenue enhancers that
Mhm.
would come to the table.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful.
And the other thing I would mention, Chairperson Bonds, is, my testimony, I talked about the oversight community of practice. We believe, that'll be a game changer for the district, because there are many, many district government employees that are providing oversight for their particular agencies. And we believe, to the extent that we can coordinate our efforts, it relieves some of the pressure on the things that I must do. And it also helps them enhance their oversight of their particular agencies, where they can detect things before they get out of hand. So we think that community of practice is going to be a game changer.
Well, I would like to see that proposal in writing, and let's see where we can go with
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
I think that may help us a great deal. I wanted to just recite for the record some of the points that you made in your closeout letter, the evaluation of DC contracted services, contracts that were in effect between 2016 through 2020. And of course, your work spanned October 2021 to March 2022. And just want to call the public's attention to the agencies that were involved, DDOT, DC Public Schools, Fire and Emergency Medical Services, and of course, the Department of Human Services, starting with Human Services, assistance on ERAP, the use of Deloitte for their contracting using the AFRA funds, and then the FIMS, the ambulance billing and data collection, and the advanced data processing, and DC Public Schools, the in-person student support centers that you had, and the funding source, the federal grant. And of course, DDOT, the bridge, the tunnel, overpass inspections, and what have you. And I mention this because these are very important contracts that you had an opportunity to I guess, sort of review. Is there anything in particular that you learned from that can help our agencies as they are currently involved in contracting services?
I think the first thing is, these contracts, we're not taking advantage of opportunities to develop economies of scale. That is where district agencies need the same thing. So instead of, having, their own contracts, we could possibly pool those requirements and get better pricing on those services. But one of the things that you're going to need in order to be able to develop that is a system where you could analyze data sets to tell you who's ordering what from whom. And this is one of the things that we talked with OCP about in our management information systems. You know, there's some misalignment in data fields where, you know, one agency may be calling requirement one thing, you know, another agency is calling it a different thing, but it's actually the same thing. But we can't do the analysis in those systems to identify what is the true need for the district. And can we develop an economy of scale for that particular commodity and save money?
And in order to do that, it sounds like we would have to have extreme cooperation, truly believe that we were one government across the territory, so to speak, and be willing to work together and take off the fiefdom hats that each agency does wear in their silo. That's a dream, I would dare say.
But earlier,
It's a good dream.
earlier, Chairperson, you said something in your conversation with Bega that I think is really, you know, it's a good point. The district is a system. All its pieces and parts function to deliver for its residents. And I don't think, I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. We are in fact a system, and we must work well together in order to provide the best services, you know, for the district. As you mentioned,
Mr. Lucas, you are talking about the revolution. And you're talking about revising this government so that it is able to be competitive today, to bring in new businesses, to bring in new residents, new programming, to reimagine how we rebuild, you know, our economy that we don't have that we once had. You know, it's not like we are a town with casinos like in Las Vegas, where that industry alone creates, I think they told me $1 billion a month of revenue. I know. And so we don't, so, but what you're talking about is revamping us. And my question then is, what's our time frame and how much time do we have? Because excuse me, but your agency is very tedious, very, you know, systemic in the way you proceed. And I don't know if modern government, as it should be, can handle that timeline.
yeah, I mean, we have to be that way. I mean, because we have to get it right. I can't afford to get something wrong, period. So we have to be painstakingly methodical in what we do. But the good thing is, this year, we do have an engagement to help the district understand, you know, how its services are working well or not working well together and where we can make improvements.
We're going to see if we can create a little part of the revolution slowly but surely. Thank you for that. When giving advice to agencies that, you know, your advice that can be used for improvements and better outcomes, what kind of feedback do you generally get from the agencies?
By and large, the agencies welcome, you know, our feedback. They welcome, you know, our recommendations, but we do have some, you know, who disagree with our findings and our recommendations, but implement what we say anyway. But we do have some who just disagree with our findings. I think that's just the nature, you know, of what we do.
Okay, in your letter, your accompanying letter, I think it's, let's see. Find the letter. Of September, 2023, where you make some recommendations. Has there been any movement on this letter you sent to the city administrator?
For contracted services,
It's the evaluation of the FY 22 audit and inspection plan, yes.
I'm not,
Uh, It, yes, it's, hmm. Yeah, it is about the contracts, yeah.
okay, it is about contracted
Mhm,
services.
yes, it is.
I do not believe we've started that follow-up yet, but the recommendations were well received by the agencies as well as the city administrator.
Okay, these are the same items that I just mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
The bridge, public schools,
Yes.
okay. So you have, it was somewhat well received, but you haven't really gotten any feedback from
No, I don't
the
think
city
we,
administrator?
yeah, I don't think we've started the follow-up process yet.
Okay, okay. Remember, the city administrators in our committee too.
Yes. I would
I
agree.
hope all of this helps.
Yeah, I've
that
got a
we're
great
all
working
together.
relationship with the city administrator.
Okay, excellent. On another point, you mentioned in your testimony about the high-risk areas, and this is from your 24 audit and inspection plan. Like you mentioned of course, the American Rescue Plan Act, information technology procurement, and then the district cybersecurity practices, and of course, the Medicaid improper payments and the entitlement programs. Again, that involves DOES and then the district rental and housing programs. You also mentioned, again, the DCHA support for affordable housing, and then efforts to respond to and prevent drug misuse. And then real property and lease administration, gun violence prevention programs and grants, and then the human capital management. These are things that I believe you are working on. These are what you targeted.
So the high risk list is designed to inform the district of what where we believe the list lies. Some of these engagements will be addressed by my office, but the point is for the entities that are involved in these things, we want to communicate with them that we believe there's a heightened risk there, and you should be taking some action to make sure you're not vulnerable. But the ones that are at the highest risk, for example, we've done some work with the American Rescue Plan, information technology procurement, we've done work there. District cybersecurity, we're doing work there this year. Medicaid improper payments, we're doing work there this year. District entitlement programs, we've done work there last year and also doing more work there this year. So the majority of the items on the list, we do have some sort of engagement where we're going to follow through on them.
All right. And number 3, where you talk about the district cybersecurity practices, I wonder if you've had any conversations with the Board of Elections regarding their data breach, which happened about, 4 months or so ago.
When it happened, we did engage in conversations with Board of Elections. We wanted to understand the nature of the breach and its potential impact. Our understanding is that it was a breach of PII, and it didn't have any impact to the district's financial system. and they had implemented a plan to remediate. So we were comfortable with where they were. But every time one of these breaches occur, we do engage the entity that was the victim. So we can understand, the scope of the vulnerability, and we can potentially communicate with the rest of the district if they are in fact at risk as well.
All right, well, that was, it was about the data. And in fact, the company that the agency was using to secure the data is the same company that is used by the FBI, which was ironic for us, but it just shows that cybersecurity is such a important field. So,
It is, and we published a MAR, it was last year, speaking to exactly what you're talking about. It's the nature of the world today. We're transacting more and more information through information systems. The more you transact through the systems, the more vulnerable you become. The more vulnerable in order to mitigate vulnerability, you have to make sure you have those controls in place to mitigate, and minimize damage when it occurs.
all right, well, go quick to here. We have your document here. Number 10 on your list was gun violence prevention programs and grants. And you speak specifically that you're looking at the mayor's order, 2361, which was effective May of 2023, that required a district-wide review of violence reduction programs. And you said you were putting the project or your review on hold until you heard from the mayor's office. What's going on with that, given that everyone is concerned about
Right.
public safety?
We had identified this as a risk probably 2 years ago and had planned to do an engagement. I've had many conversations with the administration, in this area. But by the time we started our work, but then the mayor announced that she was going to do some work in this area. So for me, rather than duplicate that effort, I wanted to see what the outcome was from the mayor's work and then make a determination if there's any other work that needed to be done in order to complete the picture.
Right. Let's see. How many internal administrative complaints or grievances did your office receive in FY 23? I know we have your answers, but
When you
Just
say
like-
internal, are you?
Well, internal meaning the government, about the government, as
Yeah,
opposed to the government procuring some service outside.
yeah, it was 900.
I think that's.
Yeah, 900, and then we had an additional
I think I did.
additional 1,700 dealing with Medicaid
Yes.
programs. Yeah, so a total of 2,600 things that came to us dealing with general programs and operations in the district and issues in the Medicaid program.
And I think you referred about 24% of those, I'll say that 24% were issues that you worked on. I have my numbers here.
That
Yes.
sounds
Yeah,
about
259 is about 24% of 900.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the math on that.
And just so the public knows, not everything that comes through our hotline is actionable, and not everything is actionable by us. But our job is to make sure whatever the issue is, to the extent that it needs to be addressed, it gets addressed.
Okay, yes, because you referred, it looks like that, the IU unit or IU unit opened 101, this is in your testimony, 101 investigations, referred 32 cases or about 33% to the U.S. Attorney. And then for FY 23, the result was, 1.1 million in orders and fines and restitution, criminal service. And then another 33% or 11 were criminal convictions, indictments, or charges. And I'm putting these numbers on the record again because it's important to say thank you for all that you do because you're busy. And I don't want to toot the horn, but your numbers far complement the numbers we get from some other entities that can take law enforcement type.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. And please help me understand the kind of relationship you have with Adult Protective Services. As you know, that's in DACL. DACL's in our committee. We all care about our seniors and we all are getting our aging, faster. So I just want to make sure that there's a good relationship with that organization.
This is one of the things that I'm particularly proud of. Our director of the Mafuku, he's been on the job, I think about 3 years now, and he's done a fantastic job. A few years ago, we focused a lot of our effort on fraud in the program. He's come in and provided a balance, make sure we're looking at fraud and also making sure, we're looking at what's happening, with our vulnerable residents. He's engaged with DACL, APS, any agency that has any connection to the Medicaid program and our seniors. He's got a footprint there to make sure they understand our role, in the program and in the processes so that when things come up, there are no delays in making sure, that they're being taken care of. So my team or his team is doing a fantastic job, working with APS, OAG, DACL, and any other entity that touches, our seniors in the Medicaid program.
Okay, and how does he touch the ombudsman that deals with nursing homes and assisted living facilities, the home care aides program?
Yes. As a matter of fact, he's in the process of convening a roundtable with all of the entities that you described. So he can regularly engage with these entities to make sure, that there's information sharing, there's communication, there's education, to make sure we're really wrapping ourselves around the problem and are effective in a system-like way.
Yes, your report said that there were 37 open investigations regarding abuse and 50 concerning fraud. Right. I would like to, get some sort of periodic reports on where we are, where he is, or your office is on this matter. This is really of great concern. And I think as more and more people feel isolated, become isolated, because things have sort of changed in the community, that there may be more cases, and we want to try and manage it sooner as opposed to when it's really a full-blown abuse case. So we
And I'll just preview for you, when we come back to see you at budget
Yes.
time, we will be talking about some additional resources that we would like to have, in our Mafuku program to really, get at the things that we're talking about.
Okay. We'll do our very best. Most definitely. How do we improve the turnaround time? Everyone says, okay, OIG is great, but OIG, it's a year and a half. I say, oh no, maybe 6 months. And now folks are saying, why not 90 days? Wondering if there is a way to issue some sort of preliminary finding that would inform, well, Ed, from all of what you're seeing at that particular point in time, that this is an issue that needs to further investigation. Or from what you're seeing, it's very hard for you to move forward at this time.
Sure.
Something that would be that would help us to move the agenda. Things are moving fast, but I understand the nature of the investigations you do are very time consuming. But still, society is not waiting for you. So.
Yeah, I mean, it just, when you're talking about criminal investigations, it's completely inappropriate to prematurely give anybody, any information regarding that particular investigation. Now, as far as timelines go, sometimes there's nothing you can do to speed up the timeline. Sometimes you may be able to put additional resources to it to speed up some of the processes. For example, conducting interviews or analyzing evidence. But there comes a time where the investigation gets to a point where we turn it over to prosecutors, and then they take whatever time it is that they need. But what the public should understand is that our office, we move as efficiently as our resources and the process allows. Some of our work may take 6 months. Some of our work may take years. It all depends on what the particular issue is. But we try our best because we understand that the public wants to know, well, what happened? Trust me, as the IG, I want to get through this stuff as quickly as possible so we can move on to the next thing. But sometimes things are out of our control, but I just hope the public understands that we move the District of Columbia Office of Inspector General and all of our investigative matters. We move as expeditiously as our resources and our processes allow.
Mr. Lucas, I wanted to touch on just generally, really, the letter we received from your office indicating that you had in fact procured a company that would look at the sexual harassment case that was brought to your attention a few months ago. And I think we're talking a cost of $600,000 maybe. Can you give me some indication as to whether or not this is something that you feel the Inspector General should be involved in? And I guess more importantly, should you be referring these to this kind of matter to the U.S. Attorney, or just how do you feel about this kind of?
So the issue of investigating sexual harassment, it is not traditionally an inspector general function. It's traditionally handled through management processes. The only time that the IG should or may step in is if something has gone wrong. If an investigative process was corrupted in some way, that is the role of the Inspector General. So when you have these instances of sexual harassment, and this happens, in many jurisdictions, typically what happens is someone comes forward, says something happens to them, and management looks at it and makes a determination on what happens. Now, there are some cases where the conduct may be criminal in nature. And again, even if it's criminal in nature, it's still not within the purview of the Inspector General. Those matters, are addressed through MPD. So, bringing the Inspector General into this particular issue is unusual, in my judgment. But of course, I work for the District of Columbia. So whatever you mandate is what I do.
I just needed to, if I could, just get your thoughts on that, because we're concerned, obviously. And our office was responsible, or is responsible for reviewing that idea. And we were trying to figure out, where does it fit? We know that if you feel you've been abused, certainly if you've been assaulted, that you can take that immediately to, as you say, MPD, or to, I guess, the U.S. Attorney's Office. God forbid you have to take it to the DC attorney for juveniles, but it does happen in our society. And so, but when you talk about sexual abuse, which is, it can be physical, touching, or it can be verbal, just trying to figure out where does it really fit in with your work? Where does it really fit in the government? And so that's why I was asking that question.
Many of the resources that you need are already in place. The Office of Human Rights, Bega in some instances, MPD, management, the processes are there. And again, my role traditionally is when something has been mismanaged or something has been abused, that's where the role of the OIG is then appropriate.
All right, so changing horses then. When we talk about your role, you mentioned extensively criminal investigations, but are there other kinds of investigations that you do? Because I guess anytime there's abuse, misappropriation or something, that would be considered criminal, am I correct? Those white collar crimes, are they considered criminal that we?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay,
But
okay.
there can be abuses or mismanagement that don't rise to the level of criminality, but that's still within my purview. We do conduct administrative investigations into conduct, that are violations of policies and rules and regulations.
What would be an example of that?
Someone's improper use of a contract. Someone, sometimes low-level time and abuse, time and attendance issues. And in some cases, it may start off as a criminal matter, but then it may devolve into something that's just simply administrative. I have two sides of my organization that deal with criminal, and then another side of my organization deals with the administrative part. But what we typically like to do is give agencies an opportunity, to police themselves. Because sometimes an agency simply doesn't know something has occurred in their agency, and it's completely appropriate for them to investigate it themselves and have some accountability. But there are some times when an agency didn't do what it was supposed to do. So then we would step in and investigate the matter ourselves.
Do you have an idea or an opinion on a situation that I think our government is concerned with? And that is this portal or this filing of tip worker salaries that resulted from the um, Initiative 82. And there have been a number of situations where restaurateurs have indicated they receive bills for thousands of dollars, all because of I guess, the reporting system, where the glitch showed only maybe $1.46. But then I think our laws require that they be charged a very hefty fine. Do you have any thoughts on that? How we can maybe fix that? This is less than a 90-day review I'm asking for. A 5-minute review.
If it's a district government program and there are some concerns about, about the way it's functioning, we can do an expeditious review in it, but I've not looked at this particular issue, and, my head of risk assessment and future planning has not, mentioned it in any of his briefings, but we could certainly take a look at it if it's in our purview.
I think it could be, yes, sir.
Yes.
We are assuming that everything is working perfectly in your shop. But I must ask, do you have any complaints about the way your shop operates? Way you treat your employees or your employees are treated? Any grumblings or?
There are always grumblings, but what I try to make explicit, to my staff is that I have no tolerance for employees being mistreated. We have a complaints process. So that is, if something that should come to our attention, we thoroughly review the matter. And if there's accountability to be meted out, that's what happens. Our office is too small. We have an enormous responsibility in providing oversight to the district. And it's extremely important that every one of my employees know that they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And where we do not find that, we take care of it.
All right. Well, as it relates to the potential of there being a code of conduct that might be, that would be usable throughout our government for independent agencies as well as those directly under the mayor's purview, for the council, as well as for the operating agencies. I'd like to even see the courts, but I don't know if that we can pull that off. I still believe in the three-pronged government that we set up under home rule, but I don't know if we can pull it off given the change in the times. But I'm just wondering if you see a code of conduct that can work for everyone, and work is the word, the optimal word, because I'm saying not just be subscribing to it, but actually adhering to it. Do you see that possibility in our government? Yeah.
The possibility is there. And I think anytime you have one system operating off the same sheet of music, it's always far more effective. So, code of conduct, I believe we're all employees of the District of Columbia. We should all have the same code of conduct.
All right, well. All right, we have I know, just a few more questions. Who has oversight over your criminal investigators? Is that you or it's in a division?
Well, I oversee everyone, but we have a head of our investigations unit and we have a head of the Medicaid fraud control unit. Each one is an 1811 criminal investigator with extensive experience.
And of course, you know that the Comprehensive Policing Reform Act places your criminal investigators under the oversight of the Office of Police Complaints.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, is that appropriate?
I think it's fine. I welcome oversight. Of course, we have, different oversight bodies that look at our work. Anytime that we can have an external entity help us understand things that we wouldn't otherwise understand in our daily, activities, I think that's a good thing. Because we like to be as transparent, as possible.
All right, well, this also would relate to provisions relating to the use of force in
Yes, ma'am.
particular. So, okay, you're okay with that. Has the agency contemplated a workforce development opportunity to partner with UDC law?
My deputy and I have been having this conversation for quite some time, but we've not specifically done that. We do believe there is opportunity there, as well as some of the other law schools of higher learning. There are opportunities there, but we have to be careful in how we approach that because of the nature of our work. Confidentiality and those sorts of things.
I'll leave that where you left it. Does your agency currently have an internship program or an apprentice program?
No, we do not. We do not.
All right, we want to help you get those in place. And how do you conduct hiring for personnel in your agency?
How do we conduct hiring?
Yes.
I think that.
We follow the DCHR rules on hiring, and we do the announcements through DCHR website. And we go through a process of screening the resumes. And then I think the top candidates get selected for an interview. We go through an interview process, and then the hiring manager makes a selection.
All right, so you pretty much do it independent of DCHR. You manage your own personnel process.
We do it in conjunction with DCHR,
conjunction.
with the assistance of DCHR.
Okay.
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
have an MOU with the Department Human Resources?
No. DCHR is our personnel authority.
Okay, so you have your own personnel authority?
No, DCHR is our
Yes,
Yes, you're-
personnel.
okay, so
Yes.
you're
Right.
automatic on there. Okay, great. What about
I just want to clarify that we do have delegated authority for some actions.
what does that mean?
So we have delegated authority to make selections, certain selections without going through DCHR. We have delegated authority to make announcements for the position. And I can get you specifics.
All right, but you do not have a standing MOU that specifies who does what and how.
Not an MOU, but we do have a letter of delegation that specifies exactly what we can do and what we can't do.
Okay. May I get a copy of that letter of delegation, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you hire summer youth during the summer youth employment program?
No, there's not a lot that individuals from the summer youth program can do in our agency because there's training and experience required for the jobs that we have. So it's difficult for us to participate in that program, but there may be opportunity for internships though.
Or internships. What about project empowerment? You know, that's the adult life skills training and then into a bona fide job where the government pays their salary for a portion of the year. And then if things work out, they get to be picked up by the agency. Have you tried that?
No. It's something we can take a look at though, but
will?
yeah,
Okay.
in my tenure, we've not taken advantage of that.
Okay. I have had, what is it? Warts, and they gave me the little glass hands to show partnership. I'll never forget when they bought that to the office. A few years ago, I was like, what is that? And they said, you're a partner. You've done 3, you know, so no, and they have worked out very well. Just so you know.
Okay.
One is almost 6-figure,
Okay.
seriously. And so I just think that, you know, we have to think about our total community and how do we get them into the job market, opportunity for learning skills, and actually being able to take care of their households. I think that personally is one of the issues that we're facing with public safety now. You know, folks see how certain parts of us live and they don't always think about what missing ingredients are. But they know that the quality of their life is not as wholesome as yours or mine. And so when they react, which is very much human nature. So, you know, we either help now or I don't know. I'm very concerned about that and very focused on it. Well, all right. We're getting instruction from the team that did the oversight review of your thick manual. Okay. What is the status of implementation of the Office of the Inspector General Support Fund? This fund was implemented in FY 23. And it was designed to, let's see, surplus of roughly $3 million, of which 1 million went back to the general fund. The remainder was deposited into the support fund once the FY year closed as required by legislation. And where is this money, Mr. Lucas?
Where is it?
To be very precise.
I believe FY 24 is the first FY where we actually have money in it to spend. Right now, we're at $2.65 million in the fund. It is fully implemented, but we've not yet used any of these resources yet.
All right, so when we do budget, you'll talk to me about it and how you plan on using
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
understand.
mean, and just generally speaking, what we like to do, anytime we have resource, surplus money, we usually turn that money back around into more, work for our office, more engagements. So we can look at as much as we possibly can.
Now, is this monies that are generated from the 165.5 mil that you mentioned at the beginning of your statement?
Not as of yet, but that can be a source of those funds. But it's restitutions, surplus, some of
Right.
our surplus money, yes.
Is it, some of the categories you have are criminal recoveries? What does that mean, criminal recoveries?
As a result of our investigations, where money comes back to the district, where there's restitution, asset forfeiture, and so on and so forth, we get a portion of that.
All right. And what's your portion? Is it percentage?
So I believe it's 24%, I think is where we're at.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm adding up all these dollars and cents to make sure you'll appreciate it when we get into the budget, because folk will be saying, I need this, I need that, say, hey, we raised 24. You want to hold on to it
Yeah.
within reason.
Right. Just
hopefully.
gives us additional resources to do more work.
All right. Civil penalties. You have 1.6 civil penalties. This is from your FY 23 document. This is where the 165.5 mil. So you're thinking that you have you said you had 2.6 mil in your little
Yes.
general support fund.
Right.
Currently. And you can go to, is there a limit on how much you can put in that fund?
I think it's not to exceed 5 million.
Not to exceed 5. Okay, so if you do a bang up job in FY 24, you'll be very close to, you might even exceed that 5. So the balance, what happens to the balance if you exceed 5 million?
It goes to the general fund.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, and then for civil penalties, that seems to be the smallest one. Question costs, that, are these numbers at the bottom of your graph here, 70 million question costs, 82 million funds put to better use? You don't recoup those or gain those. That's just sort of esoterical, discussion about what could be. It's not real dollars and cents, correct?
It's real dollars.
it's
and
real
cents.
dollars and
Well,
cents.
it could be real dollars and cents if agencies act
Right.
on those things, and there is potential for some of that to come
To
back
you?
to the agency.
Oh.
Yes, especially if you're successful in your transparency bill, where we begin to make sure agencies are going back and recouping those dollars that should not have gone out the door. There is opportunity for us to get a portion of that.
All right, and so recouping could be in the form of operating dollars as well as capital dollars?
Yes.
I have a pig to sell you. Okay, all right. We do need to talk. There's Thank you for
opportunity
that.
there. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for that. I think that's very important point, as a way for us to get things done that we know need to be done. All right. I want to thank you very much for today and for your time and your responses. And I want to thank everyone who participated in today's performance oversight hearing for their contributions. And I hope that those who watched have a better understanding of the work of these agencies that has been undertaken over the past year and their plans for FY 24. If the public has any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of these agencies, again, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL @dccouncil.gov. The hearing record will close in 10 business days. So that would be Tuesday, February 13, 2024 at 5 p.m. The committee's next performance oversight hearing will be on Thursday, February 1, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. We begin with the Department on Aging and Community Living, the Commission on Aging, and Age-Friendly DC. So with that, I can say we are adjourned. It is now, believe it or not, 4:50 p.m. on the same day in which we started. And thank you so much. Yes, oh yes, we're coming to that too.